Chapter 2000. Ji Tianxing was knowledgeable and knowledgeable. He had seen gold, purple, blue, red, and black lightning. Only the white lightning was something he had never seen before. However, the lightning pillar contained both black and white, which immediately made him understand the power of yin and yang. This is the yin-yang tribulation. As expected, the lightning pillar that was hundreds of meters long immediately turned into a ball of black and white light after hitting Ji Tianxing. The black and white light within a radius of 5 kilometers turned into a huge disk that drowned Ji Tianxing's figure. The appearance of this disk was rather mysterious and contained the profundity of the Great Tao. The disk was half black and half white, and it was formed by a black and white yin-yang fish with their heads and tails intertwined. It was the Taiji diagram that represented yin and yang. Ji Tianxing was in the black and white formation. He had already entered another space and was undergoing a test. This was an alternate space with a radius of 50 kilometers. It was filled with black and white, and it looked extremely simple. However, there was no spiritual energy in the entire space, only the endless power of yin and yang. Ji Tianxing stood in midair and endured a powerful suppressive force. The power of yin and yang formed invisible blades that constantly strangled him. The attribute of the power was unpredictable. Sometimes it was as hot as the sun, and sometimes it was as cold as ice. No matter how strong his physical defense was, he had to resist with all his strength to protect himself. In the blink of an eye, an hour passed. Ji Tianxing stood in the black and white torrent, circulating his energy to resist the impact of the power of yin and yang. He had no time to care about anything else. He had consumed a lot of his magic power, and his mind was somewhat tired. However, the black and white torrent was endless and never stopped. Its power did not weaken at all. Ji Tianxing knew that he could not continue like this. When his power was exhausted, the power of yin and yang would multiply endlessly. If he did not find a way to resolve this yin-yang tribulation and leave this black and white space, he would definitely be trapped here until he died. Therefore, he flew forward with all his might, trying to find the end of the black and white space. However, he soon discovered that after passing through the black light area, he would enter the white light area. After passing through the white light area, he would enter the black light area. Even if he flew for tens of thousands of miles, he still couldn't find the end. It seems that only by grasping the power of yin and yang can I leave this space and resolve this calamity. Ji Tianxing murmured in a low voice. Then he sat cross-legged in the black and white space and began to cast a spell. He did not release his magic power to form a shield to protect himself. His entire body was dim, and his expression was calm as usual. It was as if he was calmly enduring the power of yin and yang. More than 1,000 years ago, when he had broken through to the martial sage realm, he had already seen through yin and yang and mastered the power of yin and yang. He had a deep understanding of the Tao of yin and yang. What is yin and yang? The sun was yang, and the moon was yin. The male is yang, while the female is yin. Life is yang. Death is yin. Right is yang. Reverse is yin. Fire is yang. Water is yin. There were too many things like this to count. In short, everything in the world has two sides, good and evil, good and bad, positive and negative. As the saying goes, when things reach an extreme, they will move in the opposite direction. Yin and yang generally referred to two opposing but interrelated forces. The two complemented each other, promoting and restraining each other, but they could reach a level of endless growth. This was similar to the generation and restraint of the 5 elements. Of course, the Tao of yin and yang was called the Tao. First, there was the Tao of yin and yang. Then there was the Tao of the 5 elements. Ji Tianxing's understanding of the world's origin and the universe had reached an extremely deep level. He quickly entered a state of cultivation and immersed himself in the power of yin and yang. His entire body was wrapped in black and white brilliance. If the black and white brilliance was a torrent, then he was a fish swimming freely in the torrent, unrestrained and free. He understood the principles of yin and yang and mastered the Tao of yin and yang. How could the black and white brilliance hurt him? Time passed silently. Ji Tianxing was immersed in cultivation. After 3 days, he had completely mastered the Tao of yin and yang and could control the mysterious power of yin and yang. Then, he began to resolve the yin-yang tribulation. He stood in the black and white torrent and stretched out his left and right palms. He made a mysterious hand seal and formed a series of hand seals. Suddenly, the black and white brilliance around him separated. The black and white separated and became distinct, gradually forming a special pattern. The process was very slow, but Ji Tianxing was very patient, as if he did not know fatigue. An entire day passed. In the space within 100 miles, the black and white brilliance had completely separated. A Tai Chi diagram, formed by the yin-yang fish, was finally formed. This undoubtedly meant that Ji Tianxing had truly mastered the Tao of yin and yang. Swoosh! After the yin-yang diagram was formed, it immediately spun faster. Then, the diagram quickly shrank and turned into a black and white pillar of light that surged into Ji Tianxing's body. That was the majestic power of yin and yang. It was all injected into his body to increase his strength. Ji Tianxing closed his eyes and calmly accepted the gift of the heavenly Tao. This was his reward for resolving the yin-yang tribulation. After 2 hours, the endless power of yin and yang was completely devoured by him. Swoosh! A light flashed before his eyes, and he returned to the sky. Beneath his feet was a ruin with a radius of 100 miles, surrounded by vast mountains. Above his head was the huge tribulation cloud vortex, and it was still gradually dissipating. Ji Tianxing had finally transcended the 6th tribulation. After the tribulation cloud vortex dissipated, it turned into a wisp of sacred golden light and surged into Ji Tianxing's body. This was the reward bestowed by the heavenly Tao after successfully transcending the tribulation. Ji Tianxing bathed in the sacred golden light, and his soul and body were baptized and strengthened. His strength was also rapidly increasing. After transcending this tribulation, his strength had increased by 4 times, and his combat strength was even more powerful. Fortunately, this is the ruins of God, and there's no one within a radius of tens of thousands of miles. No one should have seen me transcending the tribulation here, right? Ji Tianxing looked around and saw that there was nothing unusual around him, so he turned around and flew away. He continued to fly south, preparing to return to Heavenly Pillar Mountain. However, something that made him very embarrassed happened. He had just transcended the 6th tribulation when he sensed something in his mind again. The will of the heavenly Tao descended. His 7th tribulation would descend this evening. Ji Tianxing did not know whether to laugh or cry at this result. I've just transcended the tribulation, and it's coming again? Transcending the tribulation twice in a row? Is there such a thing in this world? I should have transcended the 3rd tribulation, but the heavenly Tao's detection was blocked by the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes Tower. Now that I've left the tower, the tribulation is coming all at once. If it were anyone else, they would definitely die and turn into ashes under the tribulation. He muttered in his heart, but he was not worried and continued to travel high in the sky. A few hours later, it was evening. At this moment, Ji Tianxing was speeding high in the sky, flying over a vast mountain range. Sensing that the tribulation was coming, he hurriedly stopped above a large lake and prepared to transcend the tribulation. Chapter 2001. This lake was located in the middle of the mountains and had a radius of about 100 miles. The lake water was clear and sparkling. The afterglow of the setting sun shone on the surface of the lake, giving it a faint golden red color. However, as the tribulation clouds formed, the sky became dark. The light of the setting sun was also covered. Strong winds blew on the surface of the lake, and huge waves surged. A terrifying heavenly aura came down and enveloped the entire lake, killing a large number of fish, prawns, and crabs in the lake. The demonic beasts living in the lake were all scared out of their wits. They rushed out of the lake and fled in all directions. Ji Tianxing stood calmly above the lake. He looked up at the tribulation cloud vortex in the sky and silently adjusted his breathing. Soon, the first heavenly lightning struck from the tribulation cloud vortex. Kaboom! 7 lightning pillars of different colors came down fiercely with unparalleled heavenly aura. Ji Tianxing waved his hand calmly and struck out a bright golden light. It formed a huge vortex and blasted toward the 7 lightning pillars. Bam, 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 bam. The 7 lightning pillars were blocked by the vortex and were devoured by Ji Tianxing in the blink of an eye. Then the second and third heavenly lightning bolts came one after another. 14 and 28 lightning pillars came down from the tribulation cloud vortex. Ji Tianxing used the same trick again. He used the golden vortex to block the lightning bolts and devoured them. After the third heavenly lightning, the tribulation cloud vortex began to change. When the fourth heavenly lightning struck, the number of lightning bolts had reached 56. Each bolt of lightning contained 5 different colors, and its power was several times more violent than before. Moreover, the arrangement and order of the lightning bolts also contained heavenly secrets. It was in line with the mysteries of the heaven and earth divine array. Boom, 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 boom. An earth-shattering sound exploded in the sky and shook the universe. Ji Tianxing took out the sword of burial of heaven and stabbed out dozens of sword lights to meet the lightning bolts in the sky. With a loud bang, all the sword lights and lightning bolts collapsed into billions of pieces and scattered between heaven and earth. The shock wave formed by the 5-colored light carried the power to destroy everything and hit the lake and the mountains. The water in the lake evaporated, and the surrounding mountains collapsed one after another, splashing dust into the sky. Ji Tianxing was in the middle of the chaotic turbulence, unscathed and untainted by even a speck of dust. The 5th and 6th heavenly thunders descended one after another. The number of heavenly thunders kept doubling, and the power of the heavenly thunders also multiplied. Boom! The sound of thunder resounded through the sky, and the divine might suppressed everything. The heaven and earth within a radius of a few hundred miles became chaotic. The dried-up lake turned into ruins, and the surrounding mountains turned into dust. Only Ji Tianxing remained unscathed. He stood calmly in the sky, calmly welcoming the baptism of lightning. No matter how violent the lightning was, it couldn't hurt him. Half an hour later, the 6 bolts of heavenly thunder ended. The tribulation cloud vortex began to change and was dyed with a dark red color. A blood-red pillar of lightning descended from the sky and immediately enveloped him. Once again, he was enveloped by the blood-red light and fell into the illusion of the inner demon tribulation. In the illusory realm, he went through all kinds of trials and tortures and saw all kinds of illusions. But with his strong willpower, he successfully resolved the inner demon tribulation. Moreover, he awakened many memories of his divine soul and gained a lot. After the inner demon tribulation ended, the great tribulation of wind and fire arrived as scheduled. The heavenly wind, astral fire, and the mysterious black fire burned his body and divine soul. But with the help of the great tribulation of wind and fire, he continued to refine his body and divine soul, and his strength continued to increase. An hour later, the great tribulation of wind and fire also ended. Finally, the 9th tribulation descended. Boom! A bright silver pillar of light brazenly shot down from the tribulation cloud vortex. The 1,000-meter-long silver pillar of light glowed with a cold silver light, as bright as the moon. Ji Tianxing immediately raised his eyebrows, and a playful smile appeared on his lips. The power of stars? Could it be that the test of this tribulation has something to do with stars? When this thought flashed through his mind, the silver pillar of light had already hit him. The surging silver light formed a light ball with a radius of 15 miles and enveloped him. This silver ball of light hung in the sky like a bright full moon. Ji Tianxing was trapped in another space, enduring the test of the star tribulation. At this moment, he was in a vast and boundless, starry sky. Under his feet was a dark and cold void, and in the vast starry sky around him, countless cold stars were scattered, shining brightly. Ji Tianqing was not in a hurry. He calmly looked around and speculated about the test of the star tribulation. In the starry sky, there are only many stars except for me. The stars seem very close, but in fact, they are millions of miles away. It is reasonable to say that martial artists in the crossing calamity realm cannot move in the void, let alone absorb the power of stars. Except for me, there is basically no martial artist in the crossing calamity realm who can pass this tribulation. It seems that the way of heaven's test for me is becoming more and more harsh. Ji Tianqing thought silently, and his sharp eyes observed the surroundings. After a while, he found a clue. Thousands of miles behind him, there was a small silver light ball. He observed for a long time before he could barely see that the silver light ball seemed to be a door. However, the door formed by the silver light was floating alone in the void. Could that door be the key to leaving the void and resolving the star tribulation? This thought flashed through his mind, and he flew toward the light door with all his might. In just half an hour, he had flown thousands of miles away. It was reasonable to say that he should have arrived near the starry light door. But in fact, he was still thousands of miles away from the starry light door. It was equivalent to him walking on the spot, and he did not get any closer. Ji Tianqing immediately frowned and fell into deep thought. There is indeed another mystery. I knew that the way of heaven's test was not that simple. Since he could not get close to the starry light door, he had to think of another way. Star attraction technique. Therefore, Ji Tianqing began to use the star attraction technique to absorb the power of stars in the starry sky. As he formed the seal between his hands, the stars in all directions emitted a cold silver light. Strands of silver brilliance gathered from the surroundings like thin threads and surrounded him. However, Ji Tianqing did not swallow the power of stars into his body. He gathered the thousands of strands of silver light into a bright silver light and spread it in the void in front of him. As time passed, a small silver bridge formed by starlight appeared. 2 hours later, the small silver bridge extended to 10,000 feet long. Ji Tianqing stepped on the small bridge and walked to the end. As expected, he was closer to the starry light door. It turned out that his method was correct. If he wanted to reach the starry light door, he could only use the power of stars to form a bridge. He was encouraged and excited. He used all his strength to use the way of heaven to control the power of stars. Before he knew it, 3 days had passed. Chapter 2002. Ji Tianqing had been casting spells continuously for several days and was quite tired. However, he didn't dare to stop and rest, in case another change occurred in the void. With his strong willpower, he tenaciously held on and continued to cast spells continuously. After 12 days, the length of the Bridge of Stars had reached 10,000 miles. He finally arrived in front of the starlight door. This door, condensed from starlight, was 100 feet tall. It was completely silver and radiated a holy and cold aura. Behind the light door was darkness, and layers of spatial ripples could be clearly seen. Obviously, passing through this light door would lead him to leave the void and return to the place where Ji Tianqing was transcending the tribulation. He was exhausted to the extreme. His face was pale, and his mind was weak and dispirited. However, his eyes revealed a deep sense of relief. He only wanted to pass through the light door as soon as possible. At this moment, a drastic change suddenly occurred in the quiet void. Thousands of stars all turned into dazzling meteors and flew toward Ji Tianqing. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. In just 2 hours, more than 3,600 stars had gathered around Yetian. Every star turned into a surging silver light and drilled into his body. An incomparably vast and majestic star power immediately filled his body, causing him to swell and bloat. His originally empty magic power was immediately replenished. His originally weak and tired mind was quickly recovered. In fact, the star power was too vast. He couldn't even devour 1/10 of it. In order to not be blown up by the power of more than 3,000 stars, he could only pour the excess star power into the heaven-mending orb and the sword of burial of heaven. With the heaven-mending orb and the sword of burial of heaven helping him devour the star power, the pressure on him was greatly reduced, and his body quickly returned to normal. After an entire day, all the star power was devoured by him, the heaven-mending orb and the sword of burial of heaven. Not only did he return to his peak state, but his strength had also increased by more than 3 times. Then, he stepped through the starlight door and left the pitch-black void. Swoosh! In the next moment, he returned to the sky and was still in the silver ball of light. Above his head was the tribulation cloud vortex, and below his feet was the ruined lake. Swoosh! The silver light quickly dissipated. The vortex of tribulation clouds high in the sky also quickly collapsed. An ray of divine light descended. Ji Tianxing was bathed in the divine light. His body and soul were baptized, and his strength soared again. The 7th heavenly tribulation was finally past. Ji Tianxing's strength had already reached an extremely terrifying level. He did not stop and continued to fly south, although Ji Tianxing knew that he had to go through 3 tribulations in a row. Moreover, his soul also sensed that he would have to undergo another tribulation tomorrow morning. However, he wasn't going to wait here. He had to continue on his way. As for the preparation work, there was nothing much to prepare. No matter what kind of heavenly tribulation it would only be a little difficult for him and would not endanger his safety. Unlike ordinary tribulation transcendence cultivators, they had to carefully prepare for a heavenly tribulation for decades. After transcending the tribulation, he would have to recuperate for at least a few more years. Ji Tianxing was a monstrous existence and couldn't be judged by common sense. The day passed quickly. The next morning, he sensed that the heavenly tribulation was about to arrive. He landed in a vast and majestic mountain range. In the majestic mountain range, the morning fog shrouded and the dew was fresh. The sun rose from the east, sprinkling golden light that covered thousands of miles. There were many birds and beasts in the mountain range, happy and content. What a peaceful scene. However, the tranquility here was soon broken. A gust of wind blew in the sky, and endless gray clouds gathered to form a black cloud for hundreds of miles. Thunder and lightning flashed in the black cloud, and hurricanes whistled between heaven and earth. The invisible divine power of the heavenly Tao enveloped a radius of hundreds of miles, turning this area into a forbidden zone. The mountain forest was in chaos, and thousands of monsters were scrambling to escape. Those weak monsters that were frightened by the divine power could not escape the forbidden zone in time and could only turn into ashes under the heavenly tribulation. Boom! With a shocking thunder, 8 dazzling lightning beams tore through the dark sky and blasted toward Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing was as calm as ever. He waved his hand and cast a spell to deal with the lightning attacks. The 8 colorful lightning beams were easily defeated and devoured by him. 16 lightning bolts and 32 lightning bolts followed one after another, but the results were the same. After 3 bolts of lightning, the tribulation cloud vortex changed, and its power increased by several times. When the 4th bolt of lightning descended, there were as many as 64 lightning beams, arranged in a heaven and earth divine formation, and mixed with the power of 5 elements. The 5th and 6th bolts of lightning had 128 and 256 bolts of lightning. The densely packed lightning pillars almost filled up the sky within 100 miles, like a rain of arrows shooting down. In the face of such a destructive divine power, Ji Tianxing was not afraid. He waved the burial of heaven and used a supreme sword technique to defeat all the lightning bolts in the sky. The first 6 bolts of lightning were not difficult for him. Not only was it easy for him to resist the lightning attacks, but his movements were also smooth and smooth. Soon, the tribulation cloud vortex turned blood red. The strange and unpredictable mental demon tribulation descended. Ji Tianxing was enveloped by the blood red light and lost in the mental demon illusion for an hour. Only then did he defeat the mental demon illusion and successfully pass it. The eighth bolt of lightning descended, and the great tribulation of wind and fire arrived as expected. Ji Tianxing's physical body had been tempered to the extreme. Using the great tribulation of wind and fire to temper his Dharma body did not improve much. He simply used all the power of the great tribulation of wind and fire to temper his soul. This process was very slow and very painful. However, he had the wisdom of the former divine king and an unbelievably tenacious will. Of course, he succeeded in tempering his soul. The power of his soul was greatly enhanced. Kaboom! The last bolt of lightning descended. This was the ultimate test of this heavenly tribulation. In the tribulation cloud vortex, a very strange divine lightning struck down. That 10,000 feet long pillar of lightning was actually transparent and formless. It was almost invisible to the naked eye. Only the divine sense could see it clearly. This lightning did not seem to contain any elemental power, but it had an incomparably mysterious and strange power. Ji Tianxing did not pass this kind of heavenly tribulation in his previous life. He was simply baffled. Since ancient times, who has seen invisible divine lightning? Is this still considered divine lightning? When this thought flashed through his mind, the invisible divine lightning had already struck him. Bang! In the deafening loud sound, the invisible divine lightning turned into a ball of transparent brilliance and enveloped him. If one used their divine sense to investigate, they would find that this ball of transparent brilliance was like a water bubble. Ji Tianxing was trapped in the water bubble. His eyes were tightly closed, and his soul was in a deep sleep. His soul consciousness had also entered an indescribable illusory realm. It was a dreamlike space. There were transparent light screens in all directions, flashing with hundreds of images. Every image was related to Ji Tianxing's previous life. For example, back then, Kenshin suppressed the demon emperor with a sword and saved millions of people in the Tianshan region. Chapter 2003. In the dreamlike space, the surroundings were sealed by invisible divine power. This was formless and unfathomable. Those dazzling scenes were all things that had happened in the past, and they were directly or indirectly related to Ji Tianxing. For example, back then he established a dojo at Tianju Mountain and challenged all the martial saints in the world. There had once been a famous martial saint expert who had climbed the mountain with great confidence to challenge the martial saint. In the end, he was defeated by Kenshin after 1 or 2 moves. His reputation was ruined, and he was even seriously injured. Since then, that martial saint's reputation plummeted, and the power of his sect also declined day by day, becoming weaker and weaker. A few hundred years later, this martial saint had passed away, and the sect that he had personally founded had also fallen apart, vanishing into thin air. His descendants remembered this grudge and saw Kenshin and Tianju Mountain as mortal enemies. Kenshin had already ascended to the upper realm, and there was no news of him. However, Tianju Mountain still existed. Therefore, that martial saint's descendants and disciples took revenge openly and secretly, and they crazily attacked Tianju Mountain. Another example was that when Kenshin was in charge of Tianju Mountain, he had taken in many talented martial artists. Among them, there was a person who carried a deep grudge and climbed Tianju Mountain alone, and he became a disciple of Tianju Mountain. However, this person did not do proper work, and he carried a set of jade chess all day long, looking for people to play chess with, and he disturbed other disciples who were practicing their swordsmanship. Later, the Huanglong Taoist wanted to expel this person from his sect. This person knelt in the rainy night for an entire night, begging the Huanglong Taoist to let him stay. Kenshin was moved by compassion, and he personally guided this person. After a few hundred years, this person mastered his divine power and finally became a chess saint. Moreover, this person created a huge organization with tens of millions of disciples, and he saved countless ambitious people. Then, the scene of the bright moon demon emperor following Kenshin appeared in the scene. She chased after Kenshin's footsteps all her life, and she loved him to the extreme, but she did not have a good ending, and finally died in the starry sky. 1,000 years later, she was reincarnated as the princess of the demon imperial court, but she was stranded in a human kingdom, and she followed Ji Tianxing since she was young. Even after reincarnation, she was still infatuated. Ji Tianxing did not know how long he had been in formless. After seeing thousands of scenes and images, he suddenly had an epiphany. Cause of the past, effect of the present. This heavenly tribulation is most likely a karmic tribulation. Understanding this point, his expression was rather solemn as he frowned and fell into deep thought. The chaos was divided into yin and yang, and then there was light and darkness. The power of the 5 elements gave birth to all things, whether it was the spiritual energy of heaven and earth cultivated by martial artists or the power of stars cultivated by gods. They were all traceable and real. The concept of karma and blessings was illusory and unfathomable. I never expected that the heavenly Tao would actually use this as a tribulation and set up such a test for me. When he was in the upper realm, he had come into contact with the myriad races in the universe and understood the 3,000 great Taoists and the myriad races theories. Among them, there were several powerful races and martial arts schools that believed in karma. They used their great divine powers to gain insight into their past lives, present lives, and future lives. They focused on doing good deeds and accumulating blessings, all for the sake of achieving positive results. Ji Tianxing had some understanding of this, but he had never studied it in depth. However, he never expected that the 8th heavenly tribulation from the heavenly Tao would use this as a foundation. This was simply not giving him a way out. In my past life, I also went through 9 tribulations, but they were all traceable heavenly tribulations related to the 5 elements, wind and thunder. I never thought that the few heavenly tribulations I've gone through in this life would be rarer each time, especially the reincarnation and karmic tribulations. These are not tribulations that a person should go through. Even the gods of the upper realm may not be able to resolve this kind of power. Ji Tianxing pondered with a solemn expression and sighed faintly. The heavenly Tao is ruthless, fair, and strict. It's most likely that I messed with the heavenly Tao in my past life and left a backup plan in the heavenly tribulation, causing the tribulation in this life to be so bumpy. However, since things have come to this, it's useless to talk about it. I can only try to resolve it. Thus, he began to try to resolve this karmic tribulation. After an entire day, he finally figured it out. A total of 108,000 images and scenes floated and flickered in the formless. Many of the images and scenes were his experiences in his past life and present life, and they were all directly or indirectly related. He tried to use his mind to manipulate a few images and piece them together. There was a direct connection between those images, which clearly showed the process of a certain incident and the final result. As a result, after those images were pieced together, they immediately dissipated. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing was stunned for a moment, and then he came to a realization. I see. He vaguely found a way to resolve the karmic tribulation, and immediately became spirited as he began to piece together the various images in the formless. Time passed silently. One image after another, under the guidance of his mind, quickly pieced together and disappeared. Half a month passed by quickly. More than 90% of the 108,000 images and scenes had disappeared, leaving only slightly more than 8,000 images. In this half a month, in the process of piecing together the images, Ji Tianxing also made up for countless memories. The things that he had experienced in his past life and present life, whether good or evil, right or wrong, he recalled about 90% of them. Only then did he realize that many things were not as simple as they seemed on the surface. It was a simple matter, but the consequences and chain reactions were beyond his imagination. However, as the images continued to decrease, the speed at which he pieced together the images also became slower and slower. Until now, he seemed to be in a deadlock, and his progress was extremely slow. After all, The remaining 8,000 images were all somewhat unfamiliar and messy. He observed and pondered for a long time, but he could not see any necessary connection between these images. He could not rashly try to piece them together, otherwise he would definitely make a mistake, and when that time came, it might lead to unpredictable consequences. Therefore, he sat in the formless, calmed his mind, and carefully observed the images around him. He fell into deep thought, trying to analyze the scenes in each image and the possible consequences and effects. This process was very long, and it was mentally and physically exhausting. Another half a month passed. His sea of consciousness had been immersed in thinking, and his thoughts were constantly diverging and deducing, never stopping. Out of the 8,000-plus images, another 3,000-plus images disappeared. He gained even more insights and insights. He finally understood that only by not being bound by the 7 emotions and 6 desires could he remove the fog and see the essence of things. As a god, looking down on all living beings with cold eyes, without being tainted by karma, he could live forever. His mind and emotions had reached an extremely calm and ethereal state. In this way, he could see the karmic connection between those images. After a full 3 months, all the images in the formless were pieced together by him, and they all disappeared. This mysterious, strange, and difficult karmic tribulation was resolved by him. Swoosh. Chapter 2004. It was dusk. The light between heaven and earth was dim, and the surrounding forest was deathly silent. Ji Tianxing stood in the sky above the ruins as his clothes and hair danced in the wind. He looked calm and emotionless. He looked up at the calamity cloud vortex above his head, and his eyes were calm and wise. His aura was also restrained to the extreme, as if he was an ordinary person who did not have any ripples. However, his current state made him seem like an aloof and remote god that looked down on all living things. No one in this world could understand what kind of state it was. It was not a martial arts state, but the divine path realm. It was a state that originated from one's soul. Swoosh! The calamity cloud vortex in the sky quickly dissipated and turned into a ray of sacred golden light that descended from the sky. Ji Tianxing bathed in the golden light, and his physical body and spiritual soul were baptized and strengthened rapidly. After 15 minutes, the sacred golden light gradually disappeared. His strength had also increased by several times and reached an unimaginable level. Phew! In such a short period of time, I have gone through 3 heavenly tribulations. It is so tiring and exhausting. President Ji Tian let out a sigh of relief, revealing a look of relief. Even someone as powerful as him felt exhausted after going through 3 heavenly tribulations. However, this was the will of heaven, and even a divine being could not resist it. Unless he hid in the 9 heavens 10 absolutes tower, he would not be tested by the heavenly tribulations. However, he could not hide in the God Tower forever. If he did not go through the 9 heavenly tribulations, he would never reach the martial sage realm. Ji Tianxing glanced at the mountains around him and realized that he had indeed wasted 3 months of his time trying to overcome the tribulation. I have left the Pillar of Heaven's mountain for more than half a year. I wonder how the situation is on a mountain? He muttered in a low voice and prepared to turn around and leave. However, at this moment, a huge crack suddenly appeared in the sky behind him. Swoosh! Dazzling golden light surged out of the crack, illuminating the heaven and earth within 100 miles. The golden light condensed into a huge palm that covered the sky and slammed down with a suppressive force. Before the huge palm arrived, the terrifying suppressive force had already enveloped Ji Tianxing. He felt as if he was stuck in a quagmire, unable to move an inch. His skin and nerves were stretched taut. It's a martial saint expert. He immediately realized that a martial sage had made a move. The power of that golden palm was enough to threaten his life. At this critical moment, he unhesitatingly took out the sword of burial of heaven and fiercely stabbed at the giant golden palm. The burial of heaven sword burst forth with a golden light that soared into the sky, condensing into a giant sword that was 1,000 feet long. The sword and the palm collided, and an earth-shattering bang burst out. At that moment, a thunderous boom shook the heavens and spread for hundreds of kilometers. The giant golden sword collapsed on the spot, shattering into countless fragments that scattered in all directions. A large hole was also pierced through the giant palm, but its power did not diminish as it slammed into Ji Tianqing. Boom! Ji Tianqing was sent flying away by the gigantic golden palm. His face turned deathly pale as he was sent flying tens of miles away, smashing into a pile of ruins. The 1,000-foot-tall pile of ruins suddenly exploded into pieces, raising a cloud of dust. After a long time, the dust and golden light dissipated. Ji Tianqing flew back into the sky. He did not have time to tidy up his messy hair and clothes. Holding the sword of burial of heaven, he looked toward the north. He saw a purple-robed figure slowly walking out of the darkness. It was a man in a purple robe with a head full of white hair. He was thin and tall, and his eyes were as sharp as swords. However, he was wearing a mask made of purple jade that covered his entire face. Other than his eyes, one could not see his face at all. That purple jade mask was not an ordinary item. It could block the detection of divine sense, preventing others from prying into his true appearance. There is no doubt that the purple-robed man did not want to expose his identity. Ji Tianqing stared at him with a gloomy gaze. After looking him up and down a few times, he vaguely felt that he was somewhat familiar. However, he could not see any clues and could not guess the other party's identity. Thus, he secretly used the 10,000 divine eyes to see the truth. His eyes immediately turned dark gold, releasing a mysterious power as he looked at the purple-robed man. The disguise effect of the purple jade mask was immediately seen through by the 10,000 divine eyes. Ji Tianqing vaguely saw that under the mask was a pale face with a white beard. Unfortunately, the 10,000 divine eyes could not completely see through the disguise of the mask. The face that Ji Tianqing saw was also somewhat blurry and distorted. He could not recognize who it was at all. The purple-robed man looked at him sharply and said in a low and hoarse voice, "Ji Tianqing, don't waste your energy. This Emperor's Void Mask is not something you could see through." Ji Tianqing could naturally tell that this person's voice was fake. He frowned and asked in a cold tone, "You know me? And you can find me so accurately in this vast ruins of God. You want to kill me, but you wear a mask to hide your identity. This means that I know you, or at least I've seen you before." The purple-robed man's reaction was still calm, without the slightest ripple. He said in a low voice, "You are from Tianzhu Mountain, and you claim to be the successor of Kenshin. It is difficult for the powerhouses of the major forces not to know you. As for this emperor's identity, you don't have to guess anymore. There will never be an answer, because you don't know this emperor, nor have you seen this emperor." Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and sneered. "Oh, so we have no enmity?" The purple-robed man shook his head calmly and said in an indifferent tone, "Of course not. Kenshin defeated so many powerhouses and killed so many people in his life. I don't know how many powerhouses' families were destroyed because of him and how many forces declined and were destroyed because of him. Kenshin has fallen, and we have no way to take revenge. We can only blame this on Tianzhu Mountain. You are the successor of Kenshin, the successor of Tianzhu Mountain. If this emperor doesn't kill you, who will I kill?" Ji Tianqing knew very well that this person's words were half true and half false and could not be trusted completely. However, he did not probe further and continued to ask, "The ruins of God is so big, and I moved alone. How did you know my whereabouts?" A hint of contempt flashed through the purple-robed man's eyes as he sneered. "Of course, I have to thank your arrogance and arrogance. After the Yin-Yang secret realm appeared, you fought an intense battle with the Broken Sky Alliance. Many powerhouses saw it with their own eyes, and it spread a few months ago. Although you didn't say your name, your characteristics are so obvious that those who know you can naturally guess that it's you. What's even more laughable is that this emperor searched for you in the ruins of God for 3 months, and it was originally very difficult to find you. I didn't expect that you would undergo the tribulation here and cause such a huge commotion that could be seen clearly from 1,000 miles away. You're clearly courting death. Ji Tianxing came to a realization and was secretly on guard. Back then, I dominated my generation and offended countless powerhouses and powerhouses. Even now, there are still countless powerhouses eyeing my inheritance and the mystery of ascension. There are also many powerhouses and powerhouses eyeing Tianzhu Mountain covetously. I have to be more careful in the future. Chapter 2005. The purple-robed man placed his hands behind his back and stood proudly in the night sky. He looked down at Ji Tianxing from above and exuded a powerful and domineering aura. A formless aura spread out in all directions and covered a radius of a few hundred miles. Ji Tianxing could clearly sense that the purple-robed man's strength had reached an unfathomable level. Although the purple-robed man was a martial sage like Tian Slayer of the Broken Sky Alliance and Ji Shuo of the North Underworld Mountain. However, there were differences in strength between the martial sages and their cultivation realms. There were 9 levels of the martial sage realm. Tian Slayer's cultivation realm was around the 2nd level of the martial sage realm. Ji Shuo was a 3rd level of the martial sage realm. The purple-robed man was at least a 6th level of the martial sage realm. It was no exaggeration to say that even if Tian Slayer and Ji Shuo worked together, they would not be a match for the purple-robed man. Ji Tianxing understood this point and thought to himself that he could not fight the purple-robed man head-on. He had to outsmart him. At that moment, the purple-robed man spoke again. Ji Tianxing, are you thinking of your last words? There's no need for that. If you have any last words, just keep them to yourself. You can go and die now. With that, the purple-robed man waved his hand and shot out a golden light that covered the heavens and earth. Instantly, an incomparably violent force enveloped the area within a radius of a few hundred miles. The surrounding 10,000 feet tall mountains were uprooted and quickly shrunk in the golden light. In the blink of an eye, the 10 over mountains shrunk to 100 feet tall and turned into balls of golden light that shot towards Ji Tianxing. With a wave of his hand, the purple-robed man could command the mountains and turn everything in the universe into his power. Only experts of the 6th level of the martial sage realm and above could use such a technique. Ji Tianxing did not dare to be careless and quickly waved the Burial of Heaven sword to display his sword skills. Big Dipper sword. He stabbed out with his right hand and instantly shot out 49 rays of golden light that hit the 10 over balls of golden light. Boom, 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 boom. A series of muffled sounds burst out. The sword light and the golden hill shattered with a bang, turning into an endless amount of fine powder that covered the night sky. Violent shock waves spread in all directions, and Ji Tianxing was sent flying a few miles away. The ground in a radius of 200 miles was also flattened by the shock waves and turned into ruins. After Ji Tianxing landed on the ground, he flew back into the sky without hesitation and attacked again with his sword. Seeing this scene, the purple-robed man raised his white eyebrows, and a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. Bastard, I haven't seen you in 2 years. This is not possible. The purple-robed man was filled with shock. This thought flashed through his mind, and he found it unbelievable. No, I must get rid of him today. If I let him grow, he'll be a big threat in the future. The purple-robed man's eyes were filled with murderous intent. He waved his hand again. Meteor of destruction. He raised his wide sleeves and waved his palms. He formed a profound technique and formed dozens of ancient and mysterious seals. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. 99 seals filled the night sky and emitted a bright golden light. Suddenly, 99 silver light spots lit up in the distant sky and rapidly descended. In just 2 breaths, the 99 light spots arrived above the mountain range and turned into giant meteors. Each meteor was as big as a mountain and burned with the fire of the stars. It released a destructive power and blasted toward Ji Tianxing. Everything within 1,000 miles was illuminated by the fire of the stars. This area was sealed by the divine power of the stars and was about to be destroyed. Ji Tianxing was fearless. He waved his hand and cast a spell. Star attraction spell. He formed a spell with his left hand and waved the sword of burial of heaven with his right hand. It released silver light and formed a giant starlight vortex. Boom, 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 boom. The 99 meteors bombarded the starlight vortex one after another and were all swallowed up by the vortex. Ji Tianxing used a secret spell to swallow the meteors and the divine fire of the stars. Of course, his cultivation level was not high enough. He could not swallow 99 meteors in the blink of an eye. He could only borrow the power of the heaven-mending orb to help him swallow the meteors. Even so, his speed was still too slow. He only had time to swallow 92 meteors before he reached his limit. The remaining 7 meteors shattered the starlight vortex on the spot and smashed into him. Boom, boom, boom. An earth-shattering sound exploded and spread over 1,000 miles. 3 craters with a radius of dozens of miles were blasted out of the ground that looked like ruins. The ground within 1,000 miles shook crazily, as if there was a huge earthquake. Mountains collapsed and the ground cracked. Spiderweb-like cracks appeared. What an apocalyptic scene. When Marshal Sage was angry, 1,000 miles would be overturned. Ji Tianxing was blasted deep into the ground. His hair was disheveled and blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. He used his power to shake off the soil around him. With a low roar, he flew out of the crater. In the sky, the purple-robed man witnessed the entire process. He was so shocked that his body trembled and his eyes were filled with horror. How is this possible? He is only in the crossing calamity realm. How can he control the power of the stars and swallow more than 90 meteors? The purple-robed man's strength had reached the peak of the martial sage realm. Among the many martial sages in the world, he was ranked in the top few. He was one of the top powers who was closest to the martial god realm. Due to a special opportunity, he had cultivated a secret spell to trigger the meteors. However, he had not truly mastered the power of the stars. He had only learned a little. However, Ji Tianxing's performance was like a martial god realm top power. He could swallow and dissolve the power of the stars. This was an unprecedented demon. If the purple-robed man had not seen it with his own eyes, he would not have believed that it was true. D*MN little b* starred. How'd he do it? In the entire Shenwu continent, there are no more than 10 people who can use the power of the stars. They're either peerless martial gods or top martial sages. He is only in the crossing calamity realm, but he can control the stars. He must have inherited the power of Kenshin and cultivated the secret spell to control the stars. Thinking of this, the purple-robed man became excited. His eyes were filled with greed. If that's the case, then the secret spell to control the stars belongs to me. Ever since he understood the mystery of the power of the stars and knew that it was the source of power to reach the martial god realm, he was determined to control the power of the stars. Unfortunately, the secret spell to cultivate the power of the stars was only in the hands of the 3 martial gods. He was not qualified to obtain it. It was impossible for him to cultivate it. Ji Tianxing could control the stars. To him, this was a great surprise. I want Kenshin's secret spell, the purple-robed man shouted. In a flash, he rushed toward Ji Tianxing and raised his hands to grab him. Chapter 2006. The purple-robed man shouted angrily. Dozens of cracks appeared in the dark night sky, and a black void windstorm surged out. Swoosh! Swoosh! In the blink of an eye, the powerful void windstorm condensed into 2 huge palms and grabbed at Ji Tianxing from both sides. Ji Tianxing knew the power of this skill and did not dare to face it head-on. He could only try his best to avoid it. However, the space within a 100-mile radius was sealed by an invisible force. He felt as though he was in a quagmire and could not move. Before he could fly far, he was caught by the huge black palms. The incomparably fierce void storm ruthlessly twisted his body, cutting his body until it was covered in cuts and bruises, and blood flowed out of his body. Fortunately, his physical body was strong enough, and he used a protective secret skill in time to block the power of the void windstorm. If it was anyone else, they would have been torn to pieces by the void windstorm. However, Ji Tianxing's crisis was not over. Seeing that the void windstorm did not tear him apart, the purple-robed man shook his hands and released an invisible force. The two void palms were instantly detonated, causing black clouds to explode in the night sky, creating a deafening explosion. Bang, bang, bang. The deafening sound reverberated for 1,000 miles. The violent shock waves caused the sky and earth to shake violently. Dense cracks appeared on the ground, extending for 200 to 300 miles in all directions. Ji Tianxing was severely injured, and his body twisted and folded strangely. Numerous wounds appeared on his body, and blood gushed out. He looked like a ball of paper that had been crumpled into a ball and thrown 100 miles away in the night sky. Finally, he smashed into the ruins. Plop! After he landed on the ground, a deep pit was formed in the ruins, and dust filled the sky. Ji Tianxing was covered in blood and curled up in a ball at the bottom of the deep pit. Half of his body was buried in the mud. The terrifying power of the void explosion had not only injured his body, but also his spiritual soul. At this moment, he was sure that the purple-robed man's strength was not as simple as a rank 6 martial sage. He was at least a rank 8 martial sage. Ji Tianxing was only at the 8th level of the tribulation passing realm, while his opponent was at the 8th level of the martial sage realm. There was a difference of a whole realm between the two, so how could they be mentioned in the same breath? No matter how monstrous Ji Tianxing was, there was no way he could withstand it. The only thing he could do now was to think of a way to escape. Fighting to the death despite knowing that you were outmatched wasn't bravery, but stupidity. At this moment, the purple-robed man strode across the night sky and rushed over with a murderous aura. Ji Tianxing, it's time for you to die. The purple-robed man let out a deep growl, looking down at Ji Tianxing from a high position. He then waved his hand and sent out a faint blue flame. Soul-breaking water. The earth-shattering blue flames were like a waterfall pouring down from the sky and about to drown Ji Tianxing. Before the blue flames arrived, Ji Tianxing had already sensed the extreme coldness and tearing in his soul. He didn't doubt that this kind of blue flame was specifically used to deal with the soul. Once he was hit, even if he didn't die, his soul would be severely injured. He might even faint on the spot. At this critical moment, he could only pull himself together and fight back with all his might. Heavenly Dragon Palm. Ji Tianxing let out a low growl, releasing a vast amount of dermic powers, and fiercely sent out 2 palms. The star divine fire spurted out from his palms, forming 2,000 feet long silver divine dragons that attacked the blue waterfall. Bang bang! The heavenly dragon, formed by the power of the stars, collided with the blue flames, creating a deafening sound. The 2 silver heavenly dragon shattered on the spot, exploding into billions of silver light fragments, which were quickly swallowed by the blue flames. However, the waterfall formed by the blue flames was also torn apart, and its power was greatly reduced. The waterfall was about to reach Ji Tianxing's head and was about to drown him. Ji Tianxing's body emitted golden flames and immediately merged with the burial of Heaven Sword. Black Tortoise Sacred Sword. Ji Tianxing merged with the Heaven Burier sword and turned into a giant sword that was thousands of feet tall and shone with golden light. The giant sword was like a divine dragon, coiled up and connected head and tail. Within the golden light, a giant tortoise-shaped beast that was as large as a mountain and had a majestic appearance appeared. It was the black tortoise of the 4 sacred beasts. For many years, Ji Tianxing had used the white tiger sacred sword, the vermilion bird sacred sword, and the azure dragon sacred sword, but he had never used the black tortoise sacred sword. This secret technique was the strongest defensive technique of the 4 sacred beasts. Unless it was absolutely necessary, why would Ji Tianxing use it? Bang, bang, bang. In the next moment, the blue waterfall that blotted out the sky hit the Heaven Burier sword and Ji Tianxing with a loud bang. The blue icy brilliance quickly swallowed the golden light and drowned the shadow of the black tortoise. Even the 1,000-foot-long golden sword was swallowed up by the icy blue light and disappeared without a trace. Soon, the golden light and the giant sword were both covered, leaving only the blue brilliance in the night sky. The purple-robed man stood in the night sky and looked at this scene with a ferocious expression. He sneered proudly. "Oomph! It's too easy for you to kill you like this. I will seize your soul and memory and obtain Kinshin's inheritance and secrets. The next martial god realm expert will be me." As he spoke, the purple-robed man clenched his fists proudly, his eyes shining with hope. After a few breaths, the blue brilliance became weaker and weaker and was about to dissipate. The purple-robed man collected his thoughts and looked down. He thought that the burial of Heaven's sword must have been severely damaged. Ji Tianxing's soul had also been destroyed, and he died on the spot. However, when he saw the scene in front of him clearly, he was stunned. The giant golden sword was still trying its best to hold on. Even though the shadow of the black tortoise was mostly destroyed and only had 4 legs and a tail left, it was still resisting the corrosion of the blue brilliance. The purple-robed man could clearly sense that Ji Tianxing's aura was still in the giant sword. This little bastard is indeed monstrous. He actually blocked my ultimate skill? The purple-robed man was stunned for a moment. Then he slowly raised his right palm and gathered the power of heaven and earth within 1,000 miles and slammed it down. Heaven's shaking palm. The endless power of heaven and earth condensed into a giant 5-colored palm and slammed down like a mountain. The purple-robed man believed that Ji Tianxing and the burial of Heaven's sword were at the end of their tether and would definitely not be able to withstand his palm. However, at this moment, Ji Tianxing's figure flew out of the burial of Heaven's sword. His face was pale, and his body was covered in blood. However, he looked up at the sky unyieldingly, and his eyes were filled with a determined cold light. He raised his left palm and released a turbulent golden flame. It condensed into a golden spear shadow that was hundreds of feet long and blasted toward the purple-robed man. God-slaying spear. The power of the golden spear was comparable to an attack from a deity and could pierce through everything. Kaboom! In the next moment, the god-slaying spear shattered the giant 5-colored palm and stabbed toward the purple-robed man with undiminished power. The purple-robed man did not expect Ji Tianxing to have the strength to counterattack and release such a miraculous ultimate skill. Bang! Chapter 2007. The purple-robed man had underestimated his enemy and was hit by the god-slaying spear. But he was an 8th-degree martial saint after all, and had reached the peak of martial arts. His power was terrifying. At the critical moment, he dodged sideways in time and avoided the god-slaying spear's sharp edge. Therefore, his body was never pierced by the god-slaying spear. The god-slaying spear brushed past his left shoulder and severed his left arm on the spot. The severed arm fell to the night sky and spurted out a mouthful of pale golden blood. The heart-wrenching pain caused the purple-robed man to tremble and break out in cold sweat. He gave a painful groan and staggered back 1,000 feet before he dissipated the impact of the god-slaying spear. At the same time, Ji Tianxing controlled the sword of burial of heaven and took the opportunity to escape into the distance. Swoosh! He merged with the sword of burial of heaven and turned into a ray of golden flowing light. Like lightning, he cut across the night sky and flew 100 miles away in the blink of an eye. When the purple-robed man regained his senses, he flew into a rage and started to chase after him. Ji Tianxing, you despicable beast. You still want to escape? Wishful thinking. He shouted angrily, and his eyes turned ferocious with murderous intent. Swoosh! White light burst forth from his body, and his feet moved in a mysterious way. With each step, he could travel 100 miles. In just 20 breaths, both parties had flown 1,000 miles away. Unfortunately, Ji Tianxing was caught up by the purple-robed man. After all, his flying speed could not be compared with the purple-robed man's. Little beast, where are you going? The purple-robed man yelled as he waved his palms and shot out 2 giant golden palms towards Ji Tianxing, who was 10 miles away. Ji Tianxing merged with the sword of burial of heaven and exerted force with the burial of heaven at the same time. Instantly, the power exploded to the maximum. Swoosh! The speed of the sword of burial of heaven increased by 3 times and accelerated forward. In the blink of an eye, the sword of burial of heaven flew 100 miles away. The two giant golden palms missed their target and slammed into a huge mountain below with a loud bang. The mountain peak that was thousands of feet tall was smashed into ruins on the spot, causing smoke and dust to fill the sky. Damn it! The purple-robed man cursed angrily and sped up to catch up. The sword of burial of heaven flew for over 1,000 miles in one breath, then gradually slowed down. Tianxing and burial of heaven unleashed their maximum power at the same time. After all, they couldn't hold on for too long. Not long after, the purple-robed man caught up with Tianxing. This time, the purple-robed man didn't repeat the same mistake. When he was still 10 miles away from the sword of burial of heaven, he waved his palm and shot out a dozen cold beams. Swish! Swish! Each ray of cold light was a chopstick-length soul-extinguishing nail. It was a very insidious hidden weapon. Based on the purple-robed man's methods, he shouldn't have ended up like this. He could cast an earth-shattering spell and use its mysterious power to completely crush Tianxing. However, Tianxing's speed was too fast. He couldn't make it in time. As long as he could delay Tianxing and slow him down a little, he had absolute confidence that he could make Tianxing stay. The dozen cold beams formed a formation and surrounded the sword of burial of heaven. They were about to shoot down the sword of burial of heaven. At the critical moment, Tianxing decisively put away the sword of burial of heaven and used the teleportation mystic technique. Swoosh! With a flash of white light, he and the sword of burial of heaven disappeared at the same time. The next moment, the dozen cold beams passed through the white light and stabbed into a huge mountain below. Boom! 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 The huge mountain was blasted with dozens of holes and cracks. It collapsed on the spot. At the same time, Tianxing had already crossed 1,000 miles and appeared in the sky 1,000 miles away. He continued to fly without looking back and fled to the south with all his strength. The purple-robed man was stunned for a moment. Seeing Tianxing escape by teleportation, he immediately grinned coldly. Teleportation? What's the use of that? Since I've already made my move, I definitely won't let you leave the ruins of God alive. As soon as he finished speaking, the purple-robed man sped up and strode across the sky, chasing toward the south. About 2 hours later, the purple-robed man caught up with Tianxing again. He then used his secret technique in an attempt to capture Tianxing. Tianxing had no choice but to use all his strength and all kinds of trump cards to deal with him. In the end, he escaped with minor injuries and escaped the purple-robed man's pursuit. However, the purple-robed man was determined to kill him. How could he let him escape? Both parties started a chase in the ruins of God and rushed to the south at an extremely fast speed. A day later, both parties chased for 200,000 miles. This was already Tianxing's limit. He was already heavily injured, and after a series of battles and fleeing, his magic power had long been depleted. At this time, he was truly an arrow at the end of its flight. However, the purple-robed man's aura was long and drawn out, as if he would never tire. When he caught up with Tianxing again, Tianxing was in complete despair. He had no other choice, and there was nowhere to hide. Even the sword of burial of heaven could not help him escape. He could only join forces with him to fight the purple-robed man to the death. Whoosh! The purple-robed man's figure flashed and blocked Tianxing's path. Tianxing could only stop and stand in the sky with a pale face. He held onto the sword of burial of heaven and panted violently. The purple-robed man saw Liu Yin's sorry state and detected that Liu Yin's aura was chaotic and his magic power was extremely weak. A mocking expression appeared on his face. "Kid, you were able to escape from me a few times and survive until now. It's truly a miracle. Even I can't help but admire you. You're indeed a rare genius that only appears once in 1,000 years. In the future, there will definitely be a place for you in Shinwu Continent's war god position. It's a pity that you were born at the wrong time to meet me. Don't make any more pointless struggles. Give up resisting, and I'll give you a dignified death." The purple-robed man placed his hands behind his back and stood proudly. His entire body exuded a powerful confidence and domineering aura. Although Ji Tianxing was in a sorry state, his expression remained calm. His eyes were indifferent as he said, "There's an entire realm of difference between our strength, so it's normal that I'm not your opponent. You're a peak martial saint, but you still can't kill me. This is your humiliation. Furthermore, your confidence and arrogance are laughable in my eyes. Even if I'm at the end of my rope, do you really think that you can kill me?" The purple-robed man frowned and sneered mockingly. I really can't think of a way for you to escape. In your current state, you can't even use a complete secret technique, can you? I only need one palm to blast you into smithereens. Ji Tianxing looked at him coldly and sneered. If you can't think of a way, then it only proves that your knowledge is too shallow. Not only can you not do anything to me, but you will also die under my sword soon. When I break through to the martial saint realm, it will be the day of your death. When the purple-robed man heard this, he immediately began to laugh maniacally. Ha 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 ha! This is the biggest joke in the world. It's too laughable. Ji Tianxing ignored him and secretly activated the small golden pagoda in his mind, releasing a mysterious golden light. Whoosh! A layer of sacred golden light immediately enveloped Ji Tianxing. Chapter 2008. Seeing Ji Tianxing disappear again, the purple-robed man sneered disdainfully. Damn little bastard, are you trying to teleport away again? I've already said that I will never let you leave the ruins of God alive. As soon as he finished speaking, the purple-robed man released an invisible divine sense and extended it in all directions. After 2 breaths, his divine sense had covered a radius of 3,000 miles. Within this range, hundreds of mountains and dozens of rivers, billions of trees and flowers were all covered by his divine sense. From the big demons and giant beasts to the small flowers and birds, nothing could escape his perception. Previously, when Ji Tianxing teleported 1,000 miles away, he could not escape the lock of his divine sense. Because of this, he could follow Ji Tianxing closely and not be shaken off. Now, he thought that the result would not change. It was impossible for Ji Tianxing to escape from his grasp. However, after the purple-robed man's divine sense had scanned a radius of 3,000 miles, he could not find any trace of Ji Tianxing. He was stunned and frowned in confusion. He muttered to himself, "Where did that kid go? Is he invisible? Even if he is invisible, I can still find your aura." Therefore, the purple-robed man used his divine sense again and carefully scanned a radius of 3,000 miles. The result shocked him even more. He could not find Ji Tianxing's aura. Ji Tianxing was not within the radius of 3,000 miles at all. It was as if he had disappeared into thin air and evaporated into thin air. How can this be? How is this possible? The purple-robed man was a little dumbfounded and muttered in disbelief. He teleported a few times before, and each time, he could only teleport 1,000 miles away. That was his limit. He can't be more than 3,000 miles away from my divine sense. What the hell? Where did he escape to? The purple-robed man was unwilling to accept the fact that the cooked duck had flown away. He was so angry that his killing intent surged. He did not believe it, and personally searched a radius of 3,000 miles, even using all kinds of secret techniques. After tossing and turning for 2 hours, he still came up empty-handed. He had completely lost track of Ji Tianxing. He had no choice but to suppress his anger and continue flying south. That little bastard indeed has some tricks up his sleeve. He actually managed to escape right under the nose of this emperor. However, no matter how many tricks you have up your sleeve, I will never let you off. No matter what, he had to leave the ruins of God and escape back to the Pillar of Heaven Mountain. He had to go from north to south through the entire ruins of God and leave from the vicinity of Blackwind Cliff. I will be waiting for him near Blackwind Cliff. I don't believe that he won't come. The purple-robed man sneered after he made up his mind. Then, he flew towards the south at lightning speed and soon disappeared into the horizon. Meanwhile, in the 5th level of the 9 heavens' 10 extremities, Ji Tianxing was sitting cross-legged on the altar, quietly circulating his energy to heal his injuries. Beneath him was the origin divine formation, and around him were 18 Yao god statues. There were thousands of shining stars above his head, sprinkling down bright starlight that enveloped his body. He took a healing elixir, and with the help of the immense power of the stars, he quickly healed the wounds on his body. As for the injuries to his divine soul, he could only slowly recuperate. There was no way he could recover quickly. Earlier, when the purple-robed man was pursuing him, he was already in a hopeless situation and would die for sure. At the critical moment, he took out the small golden pagoda. That exquisite small pagoda was the incarnation of the 9 Heavens 10 Extremities pagoda, and also the secret key to enter and exit the pagoda. It was this small pagoda that saved Ji Tianxing, allowing him to disappear into thin air and enter the 9 Heavens 10 Extremities pagoda hundreds of thousands of miles away. This was equivalent to teleporting hundreds of thousands of miles. Even martial god expert could not do it. The purple-robed man would never have thought that Ji Tianxing actually had such a trump card. The entrance to the yin-yang mystic realm had already disappeared. Other than Ji Tianxing, no one could enter the mystic realm, and no one could find the 9 Heavens 10 Extremities pagoda. Ji Tianxing was absolutely safe hiding in the 9 Heavens 10 Extremities pagoda. Not to mention the purple-robed man. Even a martial god could not do anything to him. After all, the 9 Heavens 10 Extremities pagoda could even block the will of heaven. So what was a mere martial god? The only thing that made Ji Tianxing feel a little regretful was that he had finally left the pagoda and traveled hundreds of thousands of miles. In order to escape, he instantly returned to the 9 Heavens 10 Extremities pagoda. His previous journey had been in vain. Of course, compared to the danger to his life, this was nothing at all. Time passed silently. Unknowingly, half a month had passed. Ji Tianxing quietly recuperated for 15 days before his injuries were healed. Previously, his body was twisted like a ball of crumpled paper, and his internal organs and bones were all deformed. After half a month of treatment, coupled with his strong recovery ability, his physical injuries were finally healed. The injuries to his divine soul had also recovered by 70%, and it was no longer a problem. His strength had also returned to normal, and his essence, qi, and spirit were more vigorous. As long as he did not encounter a peak martial sage like the purple-robed man, there was basically not much danger. Half a month has passed. That purple-robed man must have left the ruins of God. If I come out now, he will definitely not be able to find me. Ji Tianxing ended his cultivation and muttered in an indifferent tone. The voice of the burial of heaven sounded in his mind and said in a complicated tone, "He has already lost track of you. The ruins of God is so big. If he can still meet you, how unlucky will you be? According to my estimation, that is a 1 in 10,000 chance, right?" Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said coldly, "There are many martial sages in the divine martial continent, at least 1 to 200 people. However, there are only 3 to 5 peak martial sages who can reach the 8th stage realm. That purple-robed man's aura somehow feels familiar. I will be able to find out his identity very soon." The burial of heaven was silent for a moment before he consoled him. Compared to the storms and dangers we experienced back then, this matter is nothing. Actually, you already have the answer in your heart, but you are not sure. So what if you know that person's identity now? You still can't fight him head-on and take your revenge. The most important thing now is for you to break through to the martial sage realm as soon as possible. Then you will be qualified to fight him. Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "There are many things that I cannot do before I reach the martial sage realm. I can't refine that star core, can't restore the prestige of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, can't kill the purple-robed man for revenge, and can't enter the North Underworld Mountain. Let's go back to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains and cultivate in seclusion for a period of time, and strive to break through to the martial sage realm within half a year." After saying that, Ji Tianxing took out the golden pagoda and communicated with it with his divine sense. The golden pagoda released a sacred golden light, and condensed into a light door in front of him. He stepped into the light door, and his figure immediately disappeared. Swoosh! In the next moment, he appeared outside the yin-yang mystic realm, on the peak of a mountain. It was dusk now, and the orange sunset was about to fall into the sky. The peak of the mountain was bleak. Ji Tianxing looked around and saw that the surroundings were peaceful, and there was nothing unusual. Therefore, he stepped into the sky and flew towards the south as fast as a ray of light. Chapter 2009. Although things were as Ji Tianxing had expected, everything was fine. The purple-robed man did not appear again, as if he had given up on the pursuit. However, he was cautious and would not be careless. When he was about to leave the ruins of God, he chose to take a detour and avoid the Black Wind Cliff. The reason was self-evident. Everyone knew that when he left the ruins of God and returned to the Pillar of Heaven's mountain, he would definitely pass by the Black Wind Cliff. The purple-robed man most likely also knew that there was a possibility that he would fall into the trap at the Black Wind Cliff. Since that was the case, Ji Tianxing naturally had to take precautions early. He would rather spend a few more hours and take a detour of tens of thousands of miles. After successfully leaving the ruins of God, he was like a bird flying in the sky and a fish leaping in the sea, soaring freely. 20 days later, Ji Tianxing crossed thousands of mountains and rivers and returned to the Pillar of Heaven's mountain. When he arrived at the Pillar of Heaven's mountain, it was early in the morning and the sun was rising. Looking from afar, the Pillar of Heaven's mountain was bathed in the morning light and surrounded by colorful spirit energy. There were flocks of birds and spirit cranes flying in the sky. At the foot of the mountain, there was a large river that flowed like a jade belt. Halfway up the mountain, it was shrouded in colorful, auspicious clouds. There were also a few young martial artists who had traveled far and wide to climb the Pillar of Heaven's mountain. They carried dreams and expectations, wanting to climb the Pillar of Heaven's mountain to become a disciple of a master. After not returning for more than half a year, the Pillar of Heaven's mountain was clearly more prosperous. Ji Tianxing was gratified as he passed through the colorful, auspicious clouds and landed on the training ground at the peak of the mountain. On the vast training ground, there were many disciples practicing swordsmanship. Ji Tianxing glanced at them and saw that they were all new disciples. There were more than 300 of them. He quietly crossed the training ground and returned to his residence in the Pillar of Heaven's palace. After entering the secret room, he ordered Ji Bai to send a message and summon the Huanglong Taoist for an audience. Ji Bai hurriedly turned around and left to carry out his mission. Ji Tianxing sat in the secret room and closed his eyes to rest for a moment. The Huanglong Taoist quickly arrived. Disciple greets Master. Welcome back to the palace, Master. Huanglong Taoist quickly walked into the secret chamber with a joyful expression and bowed respectfully. Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said calmly, "Get up." Huanglong Taoist straightened his body and said, "Master, you went to the ruins of God for more than half a year." This disciple was very worried. "Fortunately, you finally returned safely." Ji Tianxing waved his hand and said with an indifferent expression, "Master did indeed encounter some trouble in the ruins of God. There were many episodes. However, I've already resolved it. There's nothing to worry about. However, I have been worried about the situation at Pillar of Heaven's mountains." Huanglong Taoist cupped his hands in greeting and hurriedly reported, "Master, please be at ease. With this disciple guarding Tianzhu Mountain, there is nothing to worry about. For the past half a year, the Pillar of Heaven's mountain situation had been very good, and it was rapidly recovering. The disciples' cultivation resources were doubled, and they were able to receive guidance from the elders and deacons. Their enthusiasm for cultivation was high, and their strength had increased exponentially. The Pillar of Heaven's mountain's reputation had spread, intimidating the 9 sects, 18 factions, and hundreds of cities. Hundreds of millions of people gradually became loyal. Almost every day, there were young martial artists from all over the world rushing to Pillar of Heaven's mountains to participate in the assessment and enter the sect. This disciple followed your instructions and relaxed the requirements to accept disciples. We have also recruited more than 500 outer disciples and more than 1,000 odd job disciples. Speaking of the changes in the situation at Pillar of Heaven's Mountains, Huanglong Daoist was filled with gratification, and his eyes were filled with hope and expectation. Ji Tianqing was very satisfied with this and nodded. That's good. With you in charge of the sect's affairs, Master can be at ease. All right, the disciples' cultivation resources have been doubled, and the sect has recruited so many new disciples. Is the cultivation resources in the treasury enough? When this question was raised, Huanglong Daoist was startled for a moment. He looked hesitant and his eyes dimmed. To be honest, Master, the sect is now unable to make ends meet. The cultivation resources in the treasury are decreasing rapidly, and we are already struggling to make ends meet. Fortunately, the sect has the support of the divine array, which gathers the spiritual energy of heaven and earth within 1,000,000 miles. Currently, it is still able to satisfy the disciples' cultivation needs. Moreover, I have also sent out a few elders and deacons to try their best to open up a place with precious resources. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said solemnly, I will solve this problem as soon as possible. You can continue with the previous plan. After that, he took out a large amount of cultivation resources from the spatial ring and handed them to Huanglong Daoist for safekeeping to support the sect's operations. This batch of cultivation resources was worth a few 100 million spiritual stones. It was enough to support Pillar of Heaven's Mountains for another 2 years. Ji Tianqing secretly made up his mind to think of a way to get more cultivation resources as soon as possible. Pillar of Heaven's Mountains had finally recovered its vitality and was improving. If the lack of resources led to the stagnation of development, it would be a pity. Ji Tianqing asked again, Huanglong, how is the reward mission that I issued going? Huanglong Daoist respectfully reported, Master, in the past half a year, there have been very few demons that have invaded the sect's territory, and they have not caused any disasters. In the past half a year, the martial artists from various sects and cities have only captured a dozen demons and killed more than 20. But those demons were just insignificant characters, not worth mentioning. I have already followed the rules and given out rewards to those martial artists who have contributed. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said, The war between North Underworld Mountain and Luo Shui Divine Kingdom has reached its most intense moment. Of course, they will not have the time to invade Pillar of Heaven's Mountains. If they continue to be in a stalemate, it will give the sect a chance to breathe and recover as soon as possible. After that, Ji Tianqing asked Huanglong a few more things. Huanglong answered one by one and reported the situation in detail. After an hour, the master and disciple finished their discussion. Huanglong bowed and left the secret chamber. After Huanglong left, Ji Tianqing sat alone in the secret chamber and pondered for a while. He suddenly thought of something and hurriedly took out the sword of burial of heaven and entered the sword's world. Whoosh! In a flash of light, he appeared in the sky above peaceful Earth City. The flourishing peaceful Soil City was now more than twice as large as it had been before. The number of Earth Spirit commoners had also doubled, reaching around 10,000 people. However, when Ji Tianqing looked down at peaceful Earth City, he found that the city was a little messy. Many Earth Spirit citizens were repairing the damaged buildings and streets. The ground outside peaceful Earth City was covered in traces of battle, and there were still cracks in the ground. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing frowned and summoned the Golden Mountain King with his divine sense. The Golden Mountain King carried his dark golden warhammer and rushed over like a streak of light. This king greets the young master. What orders do you have for me today? Ji Tianqing pointed at peaceful Earth City and asked, Golden Mountain King, what happened in the city? Why is it like this? The Golden Mountain King showed a bitter smile. After a moment of hesitation, he explained, Young master, didn't you get a blue Kuan and throw it here? That blue Kuan was very angry and caused a ruckus in the city for a long time. It even fought with Xitigarbha divine armor many times. Chapter 2010. When Ji Tianqing left the divine pagoda, he took Lan Kuan with him. He had nowhere to put Lan Kuan, so he threw it into the sword world. After that, he was intercepted by the purple-robed man and had no time to care about this matter. Now, he finally remembered Lan Kuan. He didn't expect that Lan Kuan had already caused trouble and harmed peaceful Earth City. Lan Kuan's strength was extraordinary. It had already reached the 7th level of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. Fortunately, the Xitigarbha divine armor protected peaceful Earth City and could resist Lan Kuan's attacks and destruction. However, the Xitigarbha divine armor strength was only at the 6th level of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. It could only resist Lan Kuan's attacks and destruction, but couldn't defeat Lan Kuan. After the Jinshan king reported the matter to Ji Tianxing, he said with a bitter face, "Young master, that Lan Kuan doesn't have the intention to kill. It's just complaining and throwing a tantrum. However, our peaceful Earth City can't withstand its continuous torment. That fellow hides in the lake and comes to cause trouble every few days. This king and the Xitigarbha divine armor can't do anything to it. Our people have been on tenterhooks all this time. Young master, you should go take a look. It's best if you can make that Lan Kuan behave." Ji Tianxing nodded and comforted, "Jinshan king, don't worry. I'll go find it now." With that, he turned and left peaceful Earth City, flying toward the east. The current sword world was several times larger than before. It had already reached a radius of 500,000 kilometers. To the east of peaceful Earth City was a continuous mountain range and forest. After flying for hundreds of thousands of kilometers, Ji Tianxing discovered a huge lake among the mountains. It was a huge lake with a radius of 500 kilometers. The surface of the lake was sparkling and filled with spiritual energy. Billions of fish, prawns, and many water-type demon beasts lived in the lake. The Lan Kuan, which was thousands of feet long, lay quietly at the bottom of the lake. Half of its body was buried by pebbles and sand. It seemed to be tired and was lying at the bottom of the lake, taking a nap. Its huge mouth was slightly open as it breathed lightly. The fish and prawns that swam past, it would be sucked into its bloody mouth and become its food. Ji Tianxing was infuriated when he saw how leisurely and contented it was. Shua! Ji Tianxing stood on the surface of the lake and looked down at Lan Kuan at the bottom of the lake. He sneered and said in a playful tone, "I thought you wanted to leave this place. Now it seems that you are quite comfortable." Lan Kuan, who was currently dozing off, was immediately startled awake and hurriedly opened his big eyes. It suddenly floated out of the water, creating a huge wave that was 10 feet high. It stared at Ji Tianxing with its eyes wide open and said angrily, "You bastard! Liar! You despicable bastard! How dare you come and see me?" Probably because it was too angry, its big nostrils kept spraying out water like a fountain. Ji Tianxing was so angry that he laughed and asked in a playful tone, "Why wouldn't I dare to see you? I brought you away from the deity's sea and settled you in this paradise to help you. Not only are you not grateful to me, but you also hate me so much that you even attack my people. You are ungrateful, biting the hand that feeds you." Lan Kuan was stunned for a moment. It wanted to refute, but it opened its mouth and could not say a word. It could only change the topic and said angrily, "Anyway, I don't care. I don't want to stay here. I want to go back to the deity's sea." Ji Tianxing said expressionlessly, "The mystic realm has disappeared and the celestial pagoda is closed. No one can enter the celestial pagoda anymore." "What?" Lan Kuan was stunned. Its big eyes were covered with a layer of mist. It said with tears in its eyes, "Then I will never be able to return to the deity's sea? Woo-woo! You bastard, you big liar." Ji Tianxing said indifferently, "What's so good about staying in the deity's sea? It's boring and you can't break through the saint realm, let alone reach the immortal realm. You will be safe in this paradise, and there will be others to relieve your boredom. I can also guide you in your cultivation and help you break through the saint realm as soon as possible, or even reach the immortal realm." Lan Kuan said gloomily, "Even if I was the only one in the deity's sea, it would still be better than here. They all bullied me, especially that black monster." The black monster was referring to was the guardian deity of the Earth spirit race, the divine armor of Xitigarbha. Ji Tianxing was so angry that he laughed. He scolded, "You have a nerve to say that they bullied you? Weren't you the one who went to the peaceful Earth City to cause trouble first? If you didn't go to the peaceful Earth City to cause trouble, would they have attacked you? Lon Kuan was speechless. It couldn't refute him. It muttered weakly. Then you threw me here in a completely unfamiliar environment. Of course, I had to protect myself. Also, I was very angry at the time and needed to vent my anger. Who knew that they would be so petty? I only flopped around a few times and spilled some water. It didn't even have the courage to speak anymore. Its voice became softer and softer. Tianxing sneered again. You fat fish, don't you know what kind of body you are? You flopped around a few times and the earth cracked for them. You spilled some water, and the result was a flood. As one of the 7 ancestors of the monster race, can't you be more careful? Can't you be more reserved? Lon Kuan stared blankly at him. After a long silence, it pursed its lips and said, "But I didn't want to hurt them. I didn't do it on purpose." Tianxing purposely kept a straight face and continued scolding. It's enough that you went to cause trouble once. Why did you go and cause trouble every few days? Did you think that you were playing with them? With your mountain-sized body, who would dare to play with you like that? Tell me honestly, did you get addicted to playing with them? Did you think it was fun? Lon Kuan opened its eyes wide, revealing a clear and innocent expression. It looked like it wanted to retort, but didn't dare to open its mouth. Tianxing pretended to be angry and asked, "Do you know your mistake now?" Lon Kuan hesitated for a moment before nodding. Tianxing asked again, "Then will you go and cause trouble again next time?" Lon Kuan nodded again without hesitation. It looked like it was accepting criticism humbly. Tianxing immediately rolled his eyes and said angrily, "I seriously suspect that you're a stupid fat fish." Lon Kuan didn't understand what he meant and looked at him in confusion. Tianxing was too lazy to say more and said with a straight face, "In view of your low IQ, I order you to stay here and cultivate well. Strive to break through to the Saint Realm as soon as possible. When you break through to the Martial Sage Realm, I will find you an excellent partner and let him teach you." Lon Kuan's eyes suddenly brightened and asked subconsciously, "What partner? It's definitely not that ugly black monster, right?" Tianxing revealed a meaningful smile and shook his head. "Of course not. Your future partner is a wise and carefree white dragon." "Dragon?" Lon Kuan's eyes brightened and asked eagerly, "Where is it? Can I take a look at it first? What does it look like? If it is ugly, then I won't play with it." Chapter 2011. Lon Kuan's temperament and intelligence were similar to that of a child. It was pure and kind. Originally, it was filled with resentment and wanted to leave the sword world as soon as possible. After being lectured by Tianxing, it had forgotten its original intention, especially when it knew that it would have a white dragon as its companion in the future. All its attention was attracted to it. It did not want to leave the sword world, and its mind was filled with fantasies. What did the legendary dragon look like? Seeing its reaction, Tianxing laughed in his heart. His plan of raising a Kuan had finally taken a big step. Hence, he pretended to be serious and said to Lon Kuan, "I forgot to tell you that no one in this world can enter the secret realm and return to the Holy Pagoda except for me. Only I have the secret key to the Holy Pagoda and can enter and leave at will. So as long as you stay here and cultivate, you will be able to break through to the Holy Pagoda. After you break through to the Martial Sage Realm, I will bring you back to the Deity Sea." Lon Kuan was surprised when it heard that. "Really? That's great. I still have a chance to return to the Deity Sea. Big liar. You must keep your word and not lie to me again." Tianxing frowned and muttered in his heart, "Why does it sound so awkward?" However, he knew that Lon Kuan's intelligence was not high, and he did not argue with it. "Fathead fish, you are cultivating based on your talent now, and there is no pattern. This progress is too slow. I will teach you a holy skill that will allow your strength to soar and improve rapidly." "Great, great." Lon Kuan nodded and asked expectantly, "What is the holy skill? Can I reach the god state if I master it?" Tianxing smiled and said, "Reaching the god state is not a problem, but it will take some time. This holy skill is called the Sky-Devouring skill, and it is one of the ancient demonic skills. It is a king grade divine skill created by the Kuan tribe. In fact, he had obtained half of the sun-devouring divine skill from Yang Tian's relics, and it was similar to the sky-devouring skill. However, the sun-devouring divine skill was a demonic skill created by the Golden Crow. The sky-devouring skill was created by the Kuan tribe, and it was most compatible with Lan Kuan's talent. Lan Kuan was stunned, and he asked curiously, "Big liar, where did you come from? How do you know our secret technique?" Ji Tianxing frowned and said in a serious tone, "Change the way you address me, and I'll tell you. But if I don't call you a big liar, what should I call you?" Lan Kuan looked at him with bright eyes. Seeing how cute it was, Ji Tianxing tolerated it and didn't care about its rude words. "You can call me Young Master Ji, Young Master, or Master." Lan Kuan blinked his big eyes and asked, "Master? What you mean is that you want me to acknowledge you as my master." Ji Tianxing explained patiently, "The one who imparts the Tao is the teacher. Since I taught you the heaven-devouring art, I am your teacher. Moreover, there are countless people in the world who want to take me as their master. It's your honor to be my disciple." Lan Kuan instinctively shook his head and said with a pout, "Although I really want to believe you, I keep feeling that you seem to be bragging." Ji Tianxing furrowed his brows and snapped, "Are you going to be my disciple or not? If you don't, you won't be able to learn the heaven-devouring art. If you don't learn the heaven-devouring art, you won't be able to break through to the martial sage realm. If you don't break through to the martial sage realm, you won't be able to return to the deity sea." Lan Kuan panicked and hurriedly nodded. "I'll acknowledge you. I'll acknowledge you." "Great. Master." "What the hell is master?" Ji Tianxing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Then he activated his chi and slowly stretched out his right palm. A ball of white light shot out. The white light contained a vast amount of information and recorded the first part of the heaven-devouring art. The ancient demonic heaven-devouring art was divided into 3 parts: upper, middle, and lower. When the upper part was cultivated to its peak, one could reach the martial god realm. When the middle part was cultivated to its peak, one could reach the peak of the god realm. As for the lower part, when cultivated to its peak, one could reach the peak of the god realm. Ji Tianxing slowly sent the ball of white light, which contained a supreme divine art, into Lan Kuan's mind. The sacred and vast white light turned into a surging flood and immediately poured into Lan Kuan's mind. Lan Kuan was caught off guard and was hit by the vast amount of information. His eyes rolled back and he fainted. Seeing Lan Kuan slowly sink to the bottom of the lake, Ji Tianxing couldn't help but smile. He muttered to himself, "Humph, meeting me is your fortune from 3 lifetimes. The heaven-devouring art has been lost for many years. Apart from me, there's probably no one else who can master the complete art." With that, he turned and left the lake, flying north. Soon, he arrived at the depths of the boundless mountain range and stopped above a valley. This valley had expanded to a radius of 300 miles, and the surrounding mountains had also risen by 10,000 feet. Inside the valley, there was a 5-colored light barrier covering a radius of 300 miles that enveloped the entire valley. The 5-colored light barrier emitted a mysterious and powerful energy fluctuation that made people not dare to approach it. The valley had become a forbidden area. This was where the Yang tomb was located. The god-level formation protecting the Yang tomb had already recovered 50% of its power. Ordinary martial saints couldn't break it. Back then, Ji Tianxing hadn't reached the tribulation-passing realm and hadn't recovered Kenshin's memories. When he discovered the Yang tomb, he was still looking forward to having the burial of heaven help him open the Yang tomb when he was stronger. Now, there was no need for that at all. This was a backup plan he had left behind back then, hiding a shocking mystery. He was well aware of the truth of this shocking mystery, so why would he need to open it and investigate it? Ji Tianxing stood above the Yang tomb and quietly pondered for a moment before muttering, "When I return to the spirit realm, I'll open the Yang tomb. When that time comes, I'll definitely shock the world." With that, he collected his thoughts and turned to leave. But as soon as he turned around, he saw a towering ancient tree on the mountain to the west of the valley. That towering ancient tree was incomparably majestic. It was actually more than 2,000 feet tall, like a majestic dark green mountain peak. Millions of branches and leaves spread out, covering a radius of several hundred miles. The towering ancient tree absorbed the five-colored spirit chi emitted by the Yang tomb to its heart's content. The branches and leaves all over its body were sparkling green, releasing a dense green wood vitality. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianxing showed a gratified smile and walked in front of the ancient tree. Green light flashed from the ancient tree, and a white-haired old man in black robes immediately appeared, bowing respectfully. Sanju greets Master. Without a doubt, this towering ancient tree was forefather Sanju. Ever since he fused with the green light treasure tree, he had been cultivating in the sword world. Without the corruption of the mortal world, his heart was no longer bewitched by profit and slaughter. His temperament had also returned to nature, becoming kind and gentle. The current him truly had the demeanor of a transcendent being. Ji Tianxing sized him up and nodded slightly. Sanju, you're about to undergo your tribulation, right? Forefather Sanju bowed and answered, Master is wise. Sanju is currently preparing to welcome the arrival of the heavenly tribulation. Ji Tianxing nodded and said meaningfully, everything in the world has a chance to become a god. Even plants and trees are the same. As long as you successfully pass the heavenly tribulation and cultivate here in peace, you will also be able to ascend to godhood in the future. Chapter 2012. Ji Tianxing left the sword world and returned to the secret chamber. He opened the secret door in the corner of the secret chamber and flew underground through the secret passage. After a while, he arrived at the bottom of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, where the Divine Star Furnace was located deep underground. The huge Divine Star Furnace had long been filled with Divine Star fire, and all he could see was a bright silver color. The surging sea of fire released a terrifying power. As soon as Ji Tianxing entered the Divine Star Furnace, the violent Divine Star power poured into his body. He silently used the stellar body refining art to absorb the Divine Star fire and temper his body. Qian Yu and the Black Dragon were still cultivating in seclusion in the Divine Star Furnace. The two of them each occupied a corner, cultivating secret techniques and devouring the Divine Star fire. Ji Tianxing flew to Qian Yu's side to check on its situation. After not seeing it for more than half a year, Qian Yu's strength had improved again. It had broken through to the third level of the tribulation stage. It had cultivated the stellar body refining art to a higher level, which could be considered as a small success. Ji Tianxing silently observed for a quarter of an hour, but Qian Yu did not wake up. It was still in a state of cultivation. With the help of the divine artifact necklace, it was concentrating on absorbing the Divine Star power. Its strength had been steadily improving, which made it immersed in cultivation and completely forgot about the time. Ji Tianxing did not disturb Qian Yu. He turned and flew to another corner to check on the Black Dragon situation. The Black Dragon did not have the protection of a divine artifact. It only relied on its powerful dragon body to absorb the Divine Star fire by cultivating the advanced stellar body refining art. To Ji Tianxing's surprise, it had also reached the third level of the tribulation stage. However, its body was covered with injuries, old and new intertwined scars. It was not difficult to imagine how much pain and suffering it had endured when it was cultivating in the Divine Star Furnace. After all, it did not have a divine artifact to protect it. Ji Tianxing observed for a moment and found that its cultivation had stagnated, as if it had reached a bottleneck. Therefore, he asked the Black Dragon, "Little Black Dragon, did you encounter a problem in your cultivation?" Just as the Black Dragon was pondering, Ji Tianxing's voice echoed in its mind, causing it to tremble. It quickly opened its eyes and looked at Ji Tianxing beside it, revealing a look of surprise. "Old Ji, why did you suddenly come back? You came back at the right time. I just transcended the third stage, heavenly tribulation, 2 months ago. However, when I cultivated the astral transformation art, I encountered a bottleneck. There were some problems that I couldn't understand." After listening to its explanation, Ji Tianxing finally understood what was going on. Therefore, He patiently explained the astral transformation art to the black dragon to clear up its doubts. The black dragon pondered and pondered on his own. Not only did it take a lot of time and effort, but it was also very difficult to find an accurate answer. However, it was different with Ji Tianxing guiding it. Not only was he able to point out the crux of the matter and explain it clearly, he was also able to make it understand the reason behind the matter and draw inferences from it. Half an hour later, all of Black Dragon's questions were answered. Only then did it feel as if a heavy burden had been lifted from its shoulders, and its mood was rather excited and surging. It was filled with anticipation as it continued cultivating. Ji Tianxing turned and left, flying to another corner of the Star Divine Cauldron. The formation he had set up before was still intact, and the glazed treasure bottle in the formation was also undamaged. The longevity vine in the glazed treasure bottle had obviously shrunk by a lot, leaving only 1/3 of its original length. The white dragon's remnant soul had grown several times larger, and it had already become a ball of white mist the size of a fist. It was very dense. Ji Tianxing observed carefully and discovered that the martial saint's soul he had thrown to the white dragon had already been refined by the white dragon's remnant soul. The white dragon's remnant soul had become more solid, and it no longer looked like it would scatter with a gust of wind. It had actually regained a trace of consciousness, and it slowly swam around the longevity vine in the glazed treasure bottle. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianxing's spirits were lifted, and he revealed a gratified smile. Great! This fellow is finally showing some improvement. All my efforts and methods were not in vain. In his joy, he took out the ancient god's star fixing ring, took out a ball of martial saint's soul, and threw it into the glazed treasure bottle. Originally, the white dragon's remnant soul was absorbing the longevity vine's power. Suddenly, it saw a ball of pure divine soul power, and it immediately abandoned the longevity vine and happily pounced over. It tightly wrapped the martial saint's soul and happily devoured the divine soul power, as if it was eating heartily. Ji Tianxing stared at it and couldn't help but reveal a trace of a smile. He used his divine soul to say to himself, "Little white dragon, Master has been worried sick for you. You should quickly recover. As long as you recover as soon as possible, Master will help you fulfill your wish. The regrets of your previous life, you will make up for them all in this life. The things that you once swore to do, you will do them all in this life. With Master here, you will never have any regrets in this life." When his divine soul entered the glazed treasure bottle, the white dragon's remnant soul was clearly startled, as if it was thinking about his words. However, it didn't seem to understand. It still couldn't resist the temptation of the martial saint's soul and continued to devour it. Seeing this scene, the smile on Ji Tianxing's face became even wider. He continued to murmur, "Looks like you have indeed regained some consciousness, but it's a pity that your consciousness is still very blurry. During this exploration, not only did I obtain a demon clan's divine pagoda, but I also caught a fat fish. Back then, didn't you like to study the legends and foundations of the Kuan race? You even said in the Demon King's palace that you wanted to catch a Kuan as a mount, and you even said that you couldn't stew it in a pot. In the end, those old Demon Clan fellows chased after you for a few years in anger. That was the bold words that you said when you were young and frivolous. Even when you died in the starry sky, you still couldn't fulfill them. Now, I'll be able to help you fulfill your wish." At the beginning, Ji Tianxing muttered to himself. The white dragon's remnant soul still held onto the martial saint's soul and didn't let go, focusing on devouring it. After listening to a few sentences, it had a reaction and gradually stopped devouring the martial saint's soul. When it heard the last few sentences, it even let go of the martial saint's soul. It swam quickly in the glazed treasure bottle, jumping up and down, looking very excited. It was obviously responding to Ji Tianxing. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianxing revealed a happy smile and nodded. "Aha! You really understood. Riding a Kuan is after all an obsession in your heart. You have to recover as soon as possible to fulfill your long-cherished wish." The white dragon's remnant soul fluttered and nodded in agreement. Ji Tianxing looked at it with a smile on his face. He slowly stretched out his right palm and shot a wisp of blue mist into its body. I taught the heaven-swallowing art to the blue koan. While it was unconscious, I took a wisp of its soul. Quickly refine this wisp of its soul, and you'll be able to sense it. When it sees you in the future, it will feel an inexplicable sense of familiarity and will not reject you. The white dragon's remnant soul was stunned. It was originally a little resistant to the unfamiliar aura. After understanding what he meant, it gradually accepted the wisp of blue mist and focused on refining it. Chapter 2013. In the past, the white dragon remnant soul did not have consciousness, so its recovery speed was slow. Now, it finally regained some consciousness. This was a great improvement. It had crossed the most difficult hurdle on the road of rebirth. Ji Tianxing believed that its recovery speed would be several times faster. Originally, he estimated that it would take at least 10 years for the white dragon remnant soul to be able to move normally. Now, it seemed that it would not take 10 years. Perhaps 1 year would be enough. After all, Ji Tianxing had obtained the ancient god's Mi-Star ring, which contained many martial sage souls and a martial god soul. To the white dragon remnant soul, it was definitely the most precious treasure in the world, and it needed it the most. After settling the white dragon remnant soul, Ji Tianxing flew to the center of the star divine furnace. He sat on the star torch, immersed in the sea of fire, and began to cultivate the star body refining art. He used the star body refining art to quickly devour the star divine fire, strengthen his spiritual power, and refine his celestial body. As time passed, his strength increased rapidly. Unknowingly, 10 days had passed. Ji Tianxing cultivated continuously for 10 days and gained a lot. The spiritual soul injury that he had suffered during the fight with the purple-robed man had finally healed. His strength had reached the peak, his martial arts realm was very stable, and his physical body had become stronger. He was ready to face the 9th heaven tribulation. That would be the last heaven tribulation that he would pass. Once he successfully passed it, he would reach the 9th heaven tribulation realm, only 1 step away from the martial sage realm. Unfortunately, he was still a distance away from the 9th heaven tribulation realm. He had not sensed the will of heaven, so it was impossible for him to pass the heaven tribulation in a short period of time. Therefore, he left the star divine furnace and returned to the secret chamber. Since he had nothing to do, he strolled around the pillar of Heaven's mountain to check on the changes in the sect. The pillar of Heaven's mountain was no longer as cold and desolate as before. It had regained its prosperity. There were disciples living in each of the palaces and mansions. 2,000 odd-job disciples, 800 outer sect disciples, and a few dozen inner sect disciples were all doing their best to cultivate. The elders and deacons were also performing their duties, presiding over the affairs of the sect, and teaching the disciples to cultivate. The Spirit Beast Garden and the Spirit Herb Garden, which had been closed for hundreds of years, began to operate again under the supervision of the Huanglong Taoist. Furthermore, in the middle of every month, the Huanglong Taoist would give a sermon on the Taoist field, explaining the Tao to the disciples in public. The matter of preaching the Tao had already become an unwritten rule that had persisted for more than half a year. Every time Huanglong Taoist gave a sermon, all the disciples would flock over and listen respectfully. Over time, the news spread out of Tianzhu Mountain. The martial artists of the 9 sects, 18 schools, and various cities all knew about this matter. In the middle of every month, martial artists from various sects and cities would come to Pillar of Heaven's mountains out of admiration. Now, this event had become a grand event that happened once a month, causing the Pillar of Heaven's mountains to be very lively. Ji Tianxing observed for a few days and saw that everything was progressing in an orderly manner. The Pillar of Heaven's mountains was quickly recovering its vitality. He felt gratified. On this evening, Ji Tianxing was in the Pillar of Heaven's palace, sitting in a secret room to adjust his breathing. Suddenly, footsteps could be heard outside the secret room. Ji Bai respectfully reported, "Master, there is an important guest who came from afar and is waiting for you in the study room." Suddenly hearing this news, Ji Tianxing immediately frowned and revealed a puzzled expression. He waved his hand to open the door of the secret room and asked Ji Bai, an important guest who came from afar, waiting for me in the study room. Who is this important guest that came to the pillar of heaven's mountains to find me? Why is the important guest not in the conference hall, but waiting for me in the study room? Ji Bai respectfully bowed and explained, Master, please forgive Ji Bai for not being able to answer. I have to help the important guest keep this a secret. The important guest said that he wanted to give you a surprise. Hearing his explanation, Ji Tianxing roughly understood what was going on. The important guest who came from afar must have a close relationship with him. Thus, he got up and left the secret room and rushed to the study room at the side of the conference hall. Just as he walked to the door of the study room, he felt that there was an extremely reserved and gentle aura in the study room. This aura was extremely powerful and faintly blended with the heavens and earth. It was most likely a martial saint. Ji Tianxing was even more puzzled. He reached out and pushed open the door. What he saw was a graceful young woman standing in the simple and elegant study room. The young woman was wearing an icicle dress, which outlined her tall and slender figure. Her curves were curvaceous. Her waist-length hair was draped behind her head. She wore a jade crown inlaid with blue crystals on her head and two exquisite water cloud hairpins on her temples. Ji Tianxing was not unfamiliar with this young woman. He had even interacted with her many times. Even if he only saw her back, he could immediately determine her identity. God official Luo Li. Ji Tianxing's footsteps came to an abrupt stop. He looked at Luo Li's back with a strange expression, and a playful smile appeared on his face. I never thought that God official Luo Li would come to the pillar of heaven's mountains to find me. Hearing his voice, Luo Li slowly turned around and looked at him calmly. On her fair and beautiful face, there was a teasing smile. Her clear eyes revealed a mischievous look. She raised her eyebrows and said with a smile, Ji Tianxing, I bet you didn't expect me to come here, right? How is it? Aren't you surprised? Ji Tianxing's mouth twitched. With an indifferent expression, he said, It's not a surprise. It's more like a shock. God official Luo, let's get to the point. If you have something to say, just say it. Luo Li walked with graceful steps and stood in front of him. Her body emitted a faint fragrance that silently enveloped Ji Tianxing. She revealed a gentle smile and said with a gentle tone, Young Master Ji, I came from afar. How can you be so distant with me? Let's put aside the important matters. We haven't seen each other for a long time. You should at least entertain me. Seeing her like this, Ji Tianxing couldn't help but frown. He thought to himself, This Luo Li, she's usually high and mighty. She doesn't smile and is very cold. Why is she acting so different today? Is she trying to seduce me? No, there's definitely something going on. Thinking of this, he looked at Luo Li with an indifferent expression and said, God official Luo, you and my wife Yun Yao are good friends. Since you came from afar, I will naturally entertain you. However, let's talk about the important matters first. Once we're done, I'll send someone to serve you and arrange a place for you to stay. Luo Li was a little unwilling. She said coquettishly, Young Master Ji, there's only the two of us here. I just want to be alone with you. Why do you want others to disturb us? As she said that, she raised her slender wrist and placed it on Ji Tianxing's shoulder. This gesture was too intimate. Even a fool would understand the meaning behind it. Ji Tianxing quietly took 2 steps back and avoided it. With an expressionless face, he said, God official Luo, you've forgotten yourself. A trace of embarrassment appeared on Luo Li's face. She could only put away her flirtatious attitude and quickly return to her usual cold and aloof appearance. At the same time, a young woman's voice sounded from the corner of the study. Chapter 2014. As this voice sounded out, a beautiful woman in a long white dress walked out from the corner of the study. This woman had a graceful figure and was noble and elegant. Her entire body emitted a cold and otherworldly aura, as if she was a goddess from the 9 heavens. Her skin was as white as snow, and her eyebrows were as beautiful as a painting. Her eyes were as clear as the moon in the sky. Even if he exhausted all the words, it would still be difficult to describe her absolute beauty. She was a beautiful woman who could steal the fortune of heaven and earth. It was Yin Yao without a doubt. She walked out from the corner of the study with a bitter smile on her face and a mischievous look in her eyes. Luo Li was embarrassed by her teasing, but she couldn't do anything about it. She could only snort coldly. "Oomph, I'm testing him for you, and you're making fun of me." Normally, when a woman is pregnant and her husband doesn't return for a long time, it means that he has a change of heart. "Yao Yao, why do you trust him so much and not guard against him at all?" Yin Yao shook her head and explained with a smile, "My husband doesn't need to be tested. I've been through so many life and death situations with him, and he has never disappointed me. A mere seduction is nothing to him, and he won't be tempted." Hearing her words, Luo Li became even more depressed, and she glared at her in annoyance. "Oomph, so you're saying that I'm not pretty?" Yin Yao shook her head again and revealed a faint smile. She calmly explained, "That's not the case. Luo Li, you're also a rare beauty in this world. However, this matter has nothing to do with beauty or ugliness. Even if a woman who's prettier than me comes, it won't work." After saying that, she turned to look at Ji Tianxing and asked gently, "Husband, am I right?" Ji Tianxing nodded and said with a playful smile, "As I expected, Divine Official Luo is setting a trap for me. No wonder Divine Official Luo was so different today and took the initiative to get close to me. It's a pity that Divine Official Luo's acting is too bad. Her eyes and aura aren't on point, and her skills are a bit clumsy. Practice a few more times in the future. When you can reach the realm of being completely natural, then come and test me again." Ha ha! The moment Yin Yao appeared, he understood everything. Now that the three of them had exposed this matter in front of him, he took the opportunity to tease Luo Li, feeling extremely carefree. Luo Li suggested this idea to test Ji Tianxing. In the end, he ended up in a sorry state. Ji Tianxing laughed at him and even mocked him. She was so angry that her face turned pale. She glared fiercely at Ji Tianxing and snapped, "Humph, in your dreams. There will never be a next time." She was a noble and holy priestess. She had always been arrogant and noble. She had swallowed her pride and pretended to seduce Ji Tianxing today because she wanted to help Yin Yao. It took a lot of determination for her to make this decision. Now, it was impossible for her to do it again. It was too embarrassing. Luo Li was very embarrassed. Ji Tianxing smiled even more and wanted to tease her a little more. Yin Yao widened her beautiful eyes and glared at him secretly. He could only give up and quickly change the topic. "Yao Yao, weren't you nurturing the baby in Luotian Mountain? Why did you suddenly come to Tianzhu Mountain? It was very dangerous to cross the border on the way. Why didn't you inform me in advance?" Yin Yao smiled and explained, "It has been more than 2 years since you left Luotian Mountain. The child and I miss you very much. But our child is still not born. It will probably take another 8 to 10 years for the child to be born. The 2 children don't affect me. I can't always stay in Luotian Mountain to recuperate, so I wanted to come to Tianzhu Mountain to find you." Ji Tianxing felt warm and guilty. He quickly persuaded, "It was my negligence. I should have returned to Luotian Mountain to see you and the child. How could I let you take the risk to come here?" Yin Yao shook her head and said gently, "I know about all the big things you have done in the past 2 years. I know you are very busy, so I don't want to waste your time. Also, Luo Li and I came to Tianzhu Mountain not just to see you. I have good news to tell you." Ji Tianxing immediately showed an expectant look. "What good news?" Yin Yao stopped smiling and said seriously, "We found the whereabouts of the 4th God Pearl." "The 4th God Pearl? Where is it?" Ji Tianxing's pupils shrank, and his face was full of surprise. Yin Yao explained calmly, "Speaking of this, I have to thank Luo Li. In the past few years, she has been investigating the whereabouts and news of the God Pearl. She was also the one who found the whereabouts of the 4th God Pearl." Hearing this, Luo Li's expression eased, and she was no longer embarrassed. She waved her hand and said with a cold expression, "No need to thank me. I was just following the instructions of the God Master. If you want to thank someone, you should thank the God Master." Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were well aware of this, but they still wanted to thank Luo Li for her efforts. Ji Tianxing then asked, Yao Yao, where's the fourth god pearl hidden? If we find it as soon as possible, you will be able to extend your lifespan for another 10 years, and your strength will increase greatly. Yin Yao frowned slightly and hesitated for a while before saying, Luo Li's investigation result is that the fourth god pearl should be in the northern underworld mountain region. In the past few hundred years, there have been many strange occurrences at the border of the northern underworld mountain region, and they are all related to the god pearl. 2 years ago, the god pearl caused another strange occurrence. However, it appeared in the central region of the northern underworld mountain region. Hearing this, Ji Tianxing finally understood. No wonder Luo Li followed Yun Yao to Tianzhu mountain region. From Luotian mountain to Tianzhu mountain region, one had to pass through the northern border, and it was very dangerous. To find the fourth god pearl, one had to enter the northern underworld mountain region, and it was extremely dangerous. It was equivalent to entering the lair of the demon clan and entering the forbidden area of the northern underworld mountain region. One could lose their life at any time. Even a martial saint expert like Luo Li didn't dare to enter it. Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said in a serious tone, Yao Yao, your lifespan is limited and you must find the god pearl as soon as possible. This matter cannot be delayed. As long as we can find the whereabouts of the god pearl, no matter where it is hidden or how dangerous it is, I will find it for you. It just so happens that we have fought with the demon clan in the northern underworld mountain many times, and we haven't been able to gain the upper hand. I have long wanted to enter the northern underworld mountain and investigate the situation of the demon clan. Before Yun Yao could speak, Luo Li said in a serious tone, Ji Tianxing, the divine master sent me to protect Yao Yao and help her find the god pearl in the northern underworld mountain region. I am under the orders of the divine master, and I am more familiar with the situation in the northern underworld mountain region. You can't make decisions on your own and must listen to my arrangements. Ji Tianxing did not refute him. He only nodded and said, Things change rapidly, so a fixed plan won't work. Chapter 2015. Although Luo Li insisted on making the decision, this time, entering the Biming Mountain to search for the fourth divine pearl had to be based on her opinion and listen to her commands. However, Ji Tianxing didn't think so. Although Yun Yao didn't express her opinion, she was definitely on Ji Tianxing's side her heart. Luo Li didn't say anything. She took out a map and threw it to Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing, this is a rough map of the Biming Mountain. The 2 places where the divine pearl might appear have been marked on it. I'll give you 2 days to prepare. In 2 days, we'll set off. This matter can't be delayed. The sooner, the better. After saying that, Luo Li turned around and left the study. Shohei, who was guarding outside the study, hurriedly followed her and brought her to her residence. In the study, only Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were left. The couple hadn't seen each other for 2 years and missed each other very much, especially Yun Yao, who had been worried about Ji Tianxing's safety for the past 2 years. The 2 of them sat down in each other's arms. Ji Tianxing held Yun Yao in his arms and reached out to gently stroke her stomach. He muttered in a low voice, Strange, it's been more than 2 years. Why hasn't there been any movement? Yun Yao's stomach was still flat, and there was no sign of pregnancy at all. However, she had indeed been pregnant for more than 2 years, and the children in her stomach were growing healthily. Yun Yao held his palm and said with a smile, The longer the child is in the womb, the stronger its talent and aptitude will be. It will definitely be extraordinary in the future. You don't know, but for the past 2 years, apart from cultivating in seclusion on Luotian Mountain, I've been teaching the 2 children. They are both extraordinarily smart and have the strongest comprehension ability I've ever seen. Although they haven't fully formed yet, their souls and intelligence have reached an astonishing level, comparable to the disciples of Luotian Mountain. What? Ji Tianxing was completely shocked. The disciples who could enter Luotian Mountain were all 1 in a million martial arts geniuses, and they all had the strength of the Essence Soul Realm. As for his and Yun Yao's children, they had not even been born yet, but they already had such talent and intelligence. It was simply an unprecedented story that shocked the ancient and dazzled the contemporaries. Seeing that Ji Tianxing was filled with shock and disbelief, Yun Yao explained with a chuckle. Although our children's strength has not reached the essential realm and is only equivalent to the heaven's origin realm, but their soul's strengths, talent, and comprehension ability are not inferior to the young geniuses in the essence soul realm. Yin Yao's sides SSSS. Ents SSSS. In fact, they even cleared up the doubts of the two junior sisters and did them a great favor. And Yun's Yun. After that, the entire Luotian mountain learned of this matter. Every day, people would come to visit me. Not long after, Luo Li came to find me and told me about the divine orb. I took the opportunity to leave. Hearing this, Ji Tianxing was even more shocked. He could not help but smile. At the same time, he also understood the reason why Yun Yao left the Luotian mountain. Unbelievable. As the saying goes, the student surpasses the master. You and I are both extremely talented geniuses. Our child will be even more monstrous. In a few years, when they are born, they will definitely shock the world and create miracles. At this point, Ji Tianxing bent down and pressed his face against Yun Yao's lower abdomen to listen to the movements in her stomach. 2 years ago, when I left Luotian Mountain, the two children were still unable to speak, and I had never heard their voices before. I didn't expect them to grow to such an extent in just 2 short years. Ji Tianxing was excited and wanted to eavesdrop on the voices of the two children. He held his breath and focused. Just as he was about to listen to the voice, he heard a clear child's voice. "Father, what are you doing? Are you eavesdropping on our conversation?" The voice that came out of nowhere was obviously that of a 2-year-old girl. It was crisp, sweet, and cute. Ji Tianxing's body suddenly trembled, and his heart almost melted. Is this our daughter's voice? He suddenly raised his head and looked at Yun Yao with shining eyes. He was quite excited and excited. Yun Yao smiled and nodded. She explained, "Our children are fraternal twins, a boy and a girl. This is our daughter, and her nickname is Yaya. The boy is her brother." "Fraternal twins? Yaya?" Ji Tianxing was even more surprised. He said excitedly, "That's great. Fraternal twins are great. We will have a son and a daughter in the future. By the way, does our daughter already have a name?" Yin Yao chuckled and said, "The children are too smart. A year ago, they pestered me to give them names. I couldn't persuade them, so I gave them nicknames. As for their official names, of course, you, as their father, should be the one to name them." Ji Tianxing suddenly understood and asked, "Then what are our sons' nicknames?" "Chun Chun." Yin Yao thought for a while and said with a smile, "This is just their nickname. Why don't you name them today?" Before Ji Tianxing could answer, Yaya's clear voice came from Yun Yao's stomach. "No, mother, naming is a very formal matter. You can't be so hasty. Brother, don't you think so?" As Yaya's voice fell, another clear child's voice sounded. "That's right. Father, mother, naming is the most important thing in life. I hope father will think twice before making a decision." Although this clear boy's voice was very young, his tone was steady, and he sounded calm and steady. There was no doubt that this was Chinchin's voice. His personality was different from Yaya's. He was not as lively and cute as Yaya. He was more like a young Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao looked at each other and were immediately amused by the siblings' words. Okay. Mother will listen to you. I'll let your father think about it." Yun Yao gently stroked her stomach and nodded slightly in agreement. Ji Tianxing could not help but say, "You two brats, this is the first time you've spoken to your father, and you're already putting your father in his place. You're doing this on purpose, aren't you?" Yaya immediately chuckled softly, as if she was taking pleasure in their misfortune. Chun Chun said in all seriousness, "Father, ever since Chun Chun and little sister can remember, Mother has been accompanying and teaching us. Father, you've never been by our side. Although Mother empathizes with you, and we know that you've been rushing about and fighting outside, it's hard and dangerous. However, Mother has been worried about you and has suffered a lot for the past 2 years. No matter what, you have to make it up to Mother and spend more time with her and us. No one would dare to believe that an unborn child could say such words. However, Qinshin's words were clear and his tone was steady and powerful. Ji Tianqing was filled with guilt and pride at the same time. With such a son, what more could he ask for? After that, he chatted with Chunshun and Yaya for a while. He asked them some questions about martial arts cultivation and tested their talent and comprehension. As expected, the children's comprehension and reactions far exceeded Ji Tianqing's expectations. He was both surprised and excited. Chapter 2016. Luo Li was a woman of her word. She said that she would give Ji Tianqing 2 days to prepare, and she really only gave him 2 days. In these 2 days, he dealt with many things and made many arrangements. First, he summoned the Huanglong Taoist and gave him some instructions. He also assigned a few tasks and plans. Then, he entered the divine star furnace and awakened the black dragon, who was cultivating. This time, he only brought the black dragon with him to the north underworld mountain to search for the divine pearl. After all, Yin Yao had the glazed fire dragon with her. Although it was a dangerous treasure hunt, it was also an opportunity for the 2 dragons to cultivate their relationship. For the rest of the time, Ji Tianqing accompanied Yin Yao. He talked to the 2 children and guided them in their cultivation. What Ji Tianqing taught his son, Chunshun, was a god-level cultivation method called the 9 Heavens Cloud Dragon Art. This cultivation method had 9 levels. Warriors of the Heaven Origin realm could comprehend and cultivate it. When cultivated to the extreme, one could reach the Heaven God realm. 9 divine dragon veins would form in the body. The power was violent and fierce, and it would never stop growing. What he taught his daughter, Yaya, was a god-level cultivation method called the Infinite Stars Art. This cultivation method also had 9 levels. Only warriors of the Heaven Origin realm could comprehend and cultivate it. If this cultivation method was cultivated to perfection, one could also reach the Heaven God realm. The 365 acupoints in the body would all merge with the stars. Once this cultivation method was used, it would be as if the sun and the moon were shining together. Millions of stars would follow one's orders. It possessed great power. In Ji Tianqing's soul memory, there were millions of cultivation methods of the world. It was extremely vast and profound. These 2 god-level cultivation methods were chosen by him from millions of cultivation methods. They were the most suitable for Chunshun and Yaya to cultivate. If it was an ordinary Heaven Origin realm warrior, they would need at least 1 or 2 months to comprehend the basics. Even if they cultivated the first level of the cultivation method, it would be very difficult. Chunshun and Yaya's talent and comprehension were indeed extraordinary. Ji Tianqing had only given them a few pointers, but they had already mastered it and understood the secrets of the secret techniques. After cultivating for 1.5 days, they successfully comprehended the basics. They had also memorized the mantra of the first level of the divine art. They had a thorough understanding of it. Even Ji Tianqing was shocked by such a miraculous thing. He said, "Monsters," several times. Yin Yao was already used to it. She just looked at him with a smile, and there was a touch of happiness in her eyes. 2 days passed quickly. On the morning of the 3rd day, Luo Li came to look for Ji Tianqing and Yin Yao. The 3 of them left the Pillar of Heaven's mountains together. Ji Tianqing rode on the black dragon and took the lead in flying northeast. Yin Yao took out a square, fiery red jade box. She released a 5-colored spirit light from her palm and opened the jade box. Shwa! A brilliant light flashed on the jade box, and a flame soared into the sky. At the same time, an awe-inspiring dragon roar resounded through the clouds. Roar! After the flame dissipated, a majestic glazed fire dragon that was thousands of feet long appeared in the sky. Yin Yao and Luo Li stepped on the dragon's back. They rode on the glazed fire dragon and followed Ji Tianqing to the northeast. For more than 2 years, the glazed fire dragon had been cultivating in seclusion in the Luoshan mountain. It had benefited greatly from the insight of the heavenly dragon that Ji Tianqing had taught it. Now, it had recovered its vitality, and its strength was about to return to its peak. Even the problem of its bloodline imbalance had been resolved by more than half. At most, it would be completely eliminated in another year. At that time, there would be no power to restrict its growth. It would soon break through the shackles and reach the martial sage realm. The distance between the Pillar of Heaven's mountains and the North Underworld Mountain was 8 million miles. There were hundreds of thousands of mountains in between. The endless mountain ranges and forests nurtured billions of demons and giant beasts. Countless dangers lurked in the depths of the forest. Ji Tianxing and the other two flew for 1.5 months before they crossed thousands of mountains and rivers and arrived near the North Underworld Mountain. In the process, the three of them encountered all kinds of dangers. Not only were they besieged by demons and giant beasts several times, they also mistakenly entered 2 dangerous places and fell into layers of fog and traps. Fortunately, the 3 of them were strong, and the 2 divine dragons were not weak either. Thus, they were able to smoothly escape. In the evening, the setting sun was like blood. The black dragon and the glazed fire dragon flew side by side and stopped in the air above a wide cliff. The bottom of this cliff could not be seen, and it was covered with thick white fog. To the north of the cliff, there was a mountain range shrouded in gray fog, revealing a gloomy and terrifying aura. To the south of the cliff, there was a dark green mountain. This abyss-like cliff was 30 miles wide. It was the boundary between the 100,000 mountains and the North Underworld Mountain. The 3 of them stood on the backs of the divine dragons and looked at the foggy area to the north. Luoli pointed to the mountain range shrouded in gray fog and said expressionlessly, "We have arrived at the Devil Cliff. After crossing this cliff and going north, we will enter the North Underworld Mountain. Legend has it that on the other side of the cliff is the ghost land where the demons live. No one except the ghost race can enter alive. We all know that the 4 million miles North Underworld Mountain is the habitat of the demon race. There are dangerous mountains and rivers everywhere, filled with all kinds of poisonous fog, miasma, demonic insects, and demonic beasts. It is impossible to guard against them. We came to the North Underworld Mountain this time to look for the god Orb, not to start a war with the demon race. Therefore, we must do our best to move secretly and not make too much noise, especially Ji Tianxing." Not only did Luoli add this sentence, she also gave Ji Tianxing a warning look. Ji Tianxing did not feel embarrassed and said with a smile, "Divine Official Luo, I know more about the demon race than you do. I have dealt with them countless times. You don't need to say more about the dangers of the North Underworld Mountain. Let's enter the North Underworld Mountain as soon as possible and reach our first target, the Black Sun Abyss." Luoli glared at him and said in a dignified tone, "Ji Tianxing, this is the continent's most dangerous forbidden area, the North Underworld Mountain. Don't act rashly. It doesn't matter if you hurt yourself, but don't implicate Yin Yao." Ji Tianxing retorted with an expressionless face. "Seriously speaking, Yao Yao's understanding of the demon race is deeper than yours. The number of demon races that we have killed is definitely more than what you have seen. If you act so arbitrarily, I'm really afraid that you will harm us when the time comes." Luoli was so angry that her face turned pale and her towering chest heaved up and down. She had no words to refute Ji Tianxing, so she turned her head to look at Yin Yao and said with a frown, "Yao Yao, aren't you going to discipline your families, Ji Tianxing?" Yin Yao revealed a faint smile and just quietly watched the two bicker without any intention of persuading or stopping them. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianxing laughed even more proudly. "Ha ha, Divine Official Luo, you're good friends with Yao Yao, so of course you know her nature. She is someone who stands on the side of reason, not family. Since she is not helping you, it means that you are not in the right, and she also agrees with my words." Chapter 2017. Swoosh! The glazed fire dragon crossed the cliff first and flew into the area shrouded in gray fog. Ji Tianxing rode the black dragon and quickly followed. After entering the northern underworld mountain, the 2 divine dragons slowed down and tried to hide their auras. However, the 2 divine dragons encountered an unexpected situation after flying for 100 miles. The glazed fire dragon flew in front under Luo Li's command. When they passed by the valley between 2 mountains, Ji Tianxing suddenly realized that something was wrong and shouted at Yun Yao in front. Yao Yao, be careful. Stop. However, before he could finish his words, a bloody light suddenly lit up in the valley, shrouded in gray fog. Swoosh! Swoosh! Thousands of bloody light blades flew into the sky like a rain of arrows and shrouded the glazed fire dragon. The glazed fire dragon hurriedly stopped and released a divine flame that blotted out the sky and covered the earth, bombarding those blood-colored light blades. Luo Li's expression also changed slightly. She quickly waved her hand and shot out a dozen giant golden swords, which scattered in the valley. Bam! 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 With a series of muffled explosions, the thousands of blood-red light blades collapsed one after another, shattering into bloody light that filled the sky. Before Luo Li and Yun Yao could see the situation clearly, tens of thousands of bloody light blades flew from the valley again. The second wave of attack came in an instant. Luo Li, Yun Yao, and the glazed fire dragon attacked at the same time. They all used their secret techniques and sword shadows to destroy the bloody light blades. At the same time, Ji Tianxing had already seen through the mystery in the depths of the valley. He stared at the deep valley with sharp eyes. His gaze penetrated the heavy fog and saw through the hidden array in the valley. He waved his hands and shot out a sacred white light, which shrouded the sky and the earth. Swoosh! The sacred white light spread in the depths of the valley and covered the invisible array. It was a tribulation-level demonic Dao array, which contained a strong demonic qi and gathered a powerful force of heaven and earth. However, when the demonic Dao array and demonic qi met the sacred white light, they quickly melted like snow under the hot sun. In just 2 short breaths of time, the demonic Dao array in the valley was destroyed by Ji Tianxing. The blood-red light blades that filled the sky suddenly disappeared, and the sky returned to normal. Only then did Luo Li and Yun Yao stop. They hurriedly controlled the glazed fire dragon and quickly flew across the valley. Ji Tianxing rode the black dragon in pursuit and stopped at the end of the canyon. He looked at Luo Li and said in a calm voice, I've already said that you don't have enough understanding of the demon race, so you're not suitable to lead a team to carry out this mission. Demons were cruel, bloodthirsty, sinister, and cunning by nature. As soon as I saw this valley, which was sandwiched between 2 mountain peaks and filled with poisonous fog and surging demonic qi, I guessed that there was an ambush. Unfortunately, you didn't even wait for me to remind you before you dove in. Fortunately, this was only a tribulation-grade array formation. It was used to defend against invaders. If there's a saint-level array here, we'll be in danger. Ji Tianxing's tone was calm and solemn. He was imposing without being angry. Luo Li's face turned red from his reprimand, but she couldn't refute him. She could only purse her lips and look at him indifferently. Yun Yao saw that the atmosphere was a little awkward, so she said in a gentle voice, Tianxing, it's also Luo Li's first time in the North Underworld Mountain. She hasn't fought with the demon race before, so it's normal that she doesn't understand the situation. Moreover, you angered her just now. She was absent-minded, so she was ambushed. If she had taken precautions in advance, she definitely wouldn't have been so rash. Hearing her excuse, Luo Li's expression eased a lot. She quickly nodded in agreement. Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said expressionlessly, That's true. You can only learn from your mistakes. In the demon race's territory, you have to be vigilant at all times. If you're careless, even if you're a martial saint, you'll still lose your life. All right, the demon race's patrol team will be here soon. We have to leave quickly. Although what he said was true and didn't mean anything else, Luo Li felt that Luo Li was unhappy. She felt that he was too arrogant and pretended to be serious just to steal the limelight. I've already used my divine sense to investigate. There's no demon race activity within 1,000 miles. You said that the demon race's patrol team will be here soon. You're just trying to scare me. Luo Li snorted and said in a dignified tone, Ji Tianxing, I admit that you know more about the demon race than I do. However, you're only at the crossing tribulation realm. If you want to move around in the North Underworld Mountain, find the God Bead, and return alive, You have to listen to me." Seeing her so stubborn, Ji Tianxing sighed helplessly. Sigh, women, after saying that, he pointed to the mountain peak on the left side of the canyon and said expressionlessly, after 10 breaths, "Divine Official Luo, please put away your prejudice against me." Luo Li didn't understand what he meant and turned her head to look at the left side of the canyon. The mountain peak was shrouded in dense fog and couldn't be seen clearly. She could only release her divine sense to cover the mountain peak and carefully investigate. After a few breaths, she found that something was wrong. Large clusters of thick black fog suddenly popped up on the ground that was previously barren and full of broken stones. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The black demon fog rolled and turned into demon race warriors one after another. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of demon race warriors appeared at the foot of the mountain. Every demon race warrior had the strength of the Essence Soul Realm. They wore black and cold armor and a helmet that covered their faces, revealing only their dark purple eyes. Their auras were very fierce, and their bodies were filled with a strong murderous intent. Soon, the 100-man patrol team was assembled. They flew toward Ji Tianxing and the others with murderous aura, carrying weapons that were filled with dense demon qi. After 10 breaths, they flew to the sky above the canyon and appeared in front of Ji Tianxing and the other two. It turned out that Ji Tianxing's prediction was not wrong. Even the timing was right. Luo Li was suddenly embarrassed, and a touch of self-blame flashed in her eyes. Ji Tianxing didn't ridicule her and said calmly, "Okay, don't be stunned. We should go." With the strength of the 3 of them and the 2 divine dragons, it was easy to shake off the 100-man patrol team. However, Ji Tianxing didn't expect that Luo Li would fly away just as he was about to leave with the black dragon. She turned into an icy blue stream of light and left the dragon's back. She rushed toward the 100-man patrol team without a care for her own safety. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, she rushed to the front of the patrol team and appeared. She waved her slender hands and flicked her 10 fingers, shooting out hundreds of icy blue light blades. Whoosh! 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 Every icy blue light blade contained an extremely cold and sharp sword aura. It was enough to kill a tribulation stage powerhouse. Over 100 icy blue light blades spread out and formed a profound formation, their power multiplying exponentially. One could only hear pung 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 muffled sounds exploding in the sky one after another. The hundreds of demon race warriors were penetrated by the icy blue light blades on the spot and exploded into pieces of flesh and blood. The sky was filled with purple demon blood and body parts. They were scattered all over the canyon, emitting a pungent smell of blood. In the blink of an eye, the hundreds of demon race warriors were killed instantly. They died without a complete corpse. Chapter 2018. Ji Tianxing wanted to persuade Luo Li to leave this place as soon as possible and avoid trouble. However, in the blink of an eye, she had killed over 100 demon warriors. Ji Tianxing wanted to speak again, but it was already too late. Looking at the scattered corpses and blood, Luo Li waved her hand and shot out a flame. Whoosh! The monstrous fire poured down and soon burned the corpses to ashes. Of course, the valley was also scorched black, with black smoke curling up. After destroying the corpses, Luo Li turned around and flew back to the back of the glazed fire dragon. "We should go," she said expressionlessly. The glazed fire dragon flew to the north, and Ji Tianxing rode the black dragon to follow. He glanced at Luo Li and said helplessly, "Before entering the northern underworld mountain, you said that we should keep a low profile. We are here to find the god Bede, not to fight the demon race. Now, we have just entered the northern underworld mountain, and you have already slaughtered a patrol team." Luo Li had already guessed that he would take this opportunity to make things difficult for her, so she said coldly, "I did say these words, but you also said that we should act according to the situation. That demon patrol team was courting death, so how could I let them go?" Ji Tianxing frowned and explained, "Killing them is easy. Any one of us can do it. However, if you kill them, you will leave a trace and expose our whereabouts." Luo Li said indifferently, They are just ants, so what if we kill them? How big a storm can they cause? So what if our whereabouts are exposed? With our speed, who could catch up with us? Ji Tianxing could see that Luo Li was angry with him. No matter what he said, Luo Li would go against him to express her dissatisfaction and would never bow her head and admit her mistake. Slaughtering the demon patrol team was just to vent her anger. Those 100 Demon Clan warriors were truly unlucky to have encountered Luo Li. Unknowingly, 3 days passed. Ji Tianxing and the others rushed for 200,000 miles, leaving the edge of the northern underworld mountain and entering the demon race's territory. In all directions, there were black and white mountain ranges and wastelands, among which there were many villages. The bigger villages had thousands of people, while the smaller villages only had hundreds of people. One village after another formed the demon tribes. Everyone knew that the demonic race's demarcation of territory was very simple, not as detailed as the human races. Demon territories were divided into 3 types: villages, tribes, and cities. The villages were the smallest, with populations ranging from tens to thousands. Within the dark North Mountains, there were countless villages, just like the stars in the sky. A tribe was a gathering of many villages, and its power was relatively large. It usually had tens of thousands of people, or even hundreds of thousands of people. As for the number of demon tribes, it was said that there were more than 3,000. Within each tribe, there was a complete system of power and authority. The one with the highest authority was the chief of the tribe, followed by the high priest and elders. Each tribe also had guards of varying sizes, all of whom were brave and skillful demon warriors. Ji Tianxing and the others traveled through the mountains. They passed by dozens of tribes and secretly observed them for a long time. Through close observation, everyone had a clearer understanding of the situation in the North Underworld Mountain. In the past, the demons had always holed up in the North Underworld Mountain and rarely moved around the Shinwu continent. The outside world did not know much about the demons, and there were only a few scattered rumors. It was said that the demons were weak and had very few people. They could not be compared to the various races on the continent, and they could not pose a threat to the various divine kingdoms. It was also said that the North Underworld Mountain was a forbidden land of death that was spurned by the gods. It was not suitable for cultivation. This was a land of bitter cold, and the resources here were extremely poor. The demons that lived here were gradually withering away and dying out. However, these were all rumors from the outside world. The 3 of them personally entered the North Underworld Mountain and investigated the situation. Only then did they realize that these were all rumors. The environment and resources of the North Underworld Mountain were indeed not as good as some cultivation holy lands. It cannot be said to be rich, but it was not barren either. This was indeed a bitter cold land, and the temperature was very low. Glaciers and snowy mountains could be seen everywhere. However, the demons had been here for tens of thousands of years, and they had long since adapted to everything. What everyone saw was that the demons had been tortured by the bitter cold, which had nurtured their tenacious willpower and iron-blooded methods. The demons were ruthless to other races, but they were also ruthless to their own people, showing no mercy. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao understood the demons very well, and had long since become accustomed to them. On the other hand, it was Luo Li's first time entering the North Underworld Mountain, and her first time coming into close contact with the demons. Along the way, she had seen and heard all kinds of things that had opened her eyes and shocked her. She secretly sighed in her heart. It was no wonder that the demons were so cruel and bloodthirsty, and their willpower was so strong. It was understandable that a race that was nurtured in such an environment would be so fierce. The more she understood the demons, the more she was worried about the safety of the Luo River Divine Kingdom. That evening, Ji Tianxing and the other 2 crossed a tall mountain and flew over a valley. The flat and vast valley was at least 100 miles in radius. There were many houses, palaces, arrow towers, and minarets built in the valley. It was a medium-sized tribe with close to 100,000 demons. There were several patrols around the tribe, and they were cruising in the sky. The sky was covered with thick clouds, and the haze did not dissipate. The biting, cold wind whistled, and it was mixed with snow that covered the sky, pouring down in torrents in the valley. The entire tribe was covered in ice and snow, and it was half black and half white. However, in the middle of the tribe, there was a 100-meter-tall minaret that was spewing out a bloody light, as if it was going to break through the sky. The huge, bloody light pillar was like a dazzling torch, and it could be seen from a few hundred miles away. The entire tribe was shrouded in the bloody light, and it added a bit of mystery and strangeness. Ji Tianxing, Luo Li, and the others were attracted by the bloody light pillar. In order to hide their tracks, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao put away the black dragon and the glaze fire dragon. The three of them held their breaths and hid their auras and quietly sneaked into the valley. They came to the sky above the tribe and hid in the thick clouds, looking down at the scene below. They saw that this medium-sized tribe was built like a town. There were rows of houses and courtyards, as well as rows of palaces and streets built with black stones. However, the houses, courtyards, and palaces were all empty. The entire tribe was gathered in the middle of the tribe, in the square with a radius of 10 miles. The ground of the huge square was paved with black stones, and it was engraved with mysterious array patterns and ferocious images of gods and ghosts. In the middle of the square was an ancient altar. On the altar was a 100-meter-tall minaret. It was made of black materials and engraved with mysterious, demonic patterns. At this moment, 3 Tribulation Transcendence Realm Demon powerhouses were leading hundreds of Essence Soul Realm powerhouses to guard the minaret and the altar. Chapter 2019. There were a total of 80,000 Demon Clan citizens, and most of them were women, children, and the elderly. They knelt respectfully in the square, lined up neatly. Their foreheads were pressed against the ground as they prayed in unison. Even though it was snowing heavily and the ground was covered in thick ice, they were still praying. It was as if they didn't feel anything as they kowtowed with a devout expression. Such a scene shocked Luo Li greatly. She had also seen the scene of thousands of people worshipping in the Luo Shui kingdom. However, it was extremely rare for the Demon Clan to be so devout and fanatical. Ji Tianxing had long known that every tribe of the Demon Clan had an altar. Every year, at a fixed time, the Demon Clan would hold a grand sacrificial event. This was the custom of the Demon Clan, and there was nothing strange about it. However, it was rare to see all the men, women, and children of the entire tribe come out today. Moreover, the demonic patterns on the altar and the steeple gave him a sense of déjà vu. The 3 Tribulation Realm powerhouses were obviously the chief and priest of the tribe. They led hundreds of Primordial Soul Realm powerhouses and jointly used the Demon Clan's secret technique to draw the power of the 80,000 Demon Clan citizens and gather it in the altar. The formation in the altar was activated, and an invisible mysterious power was released through the steeple, which formed the soaring bloody light. Ji Tianxing frowned and observed for a while. Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind, and his expression changed drastically. God sacrifice? God investiture sacrifice. He suddenly remembered the scene he saw on the first level of the Jiuqian 10 Absolutes Tower. A mysterious altar was built in the square, and the statues of the Yin-Yang saints stood tall. 100,000 Demon Clan and Human Clan citizens were worshipping them, providing them with the power of faith to help them become gods. The scene in front of him was also 80,000 Demon Clan citizens worshipping them devoutly and releasing the power of faith. The demonic patterns on the altar and the steeple were the divine patterns of the people's god investiture technique. At this moment, Luo Li and Yun Yao noticed that Ji Tianxing's expression was strange, and they turned to look at him. Luo Li was puzzled and wanted to ask, but she was embarrassed. Yun Yao asked, Tianxing, did you discover something? Why are these Demon Clan members holding a sacrifice? Who are they worshipping? Ji Tianxing furrowed his brows. His face was solemn as he explained in a low voice. Only their ancestor can make the Demon Clan worship him like this. Yun Yao immediately understood and asked worriedly, You mean they're worshipping the ancestor demon god? Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "It's not just worship. The ancestral devil god used the life god sealing art to carve devil patterns on the altars and minarets, using them to absorb the power of faith of the people. Although this is very troublesome, I am certain that the ancestral devil god has already planned this. Most of the thousands of demon tribes had such altars. The ancestral fiend celestial was clearly very anxious. He was not satisfied with the recovery speed of secluded cultivation. It wants to use the life god sealing technique to recover its strength as quickly as possible." Upon hearing this, Yun Yao's pupils constricted. Her heart was filled with anxiety and worry. She did not doubt Ji Tianqing's words. However, Luo Li was confused. She furrowed her brows and asked, "Ji Tianqing, what are you talking about? What life god sealing art? What's with the power of faith?" Ji Tianqing glanced at her and patiently explained, "I believe you have already heard of the ancestral devil god's origin and strength. In the ancient god war, the ancestral devil god slaughtered countless gods, and gods of various races fell. In the end, goddess Yao Guang sacrificed herself to kill the ancestral devil god." Luo Li nodded and said, "Of course I know. The ancestral devil god of the ancient era was even stronger than goddess Yao Guang. Yao Yao inherited the inheritance and memories of goddess Yao Guang, so she could be considered the reincarnation of goddess Yao Guang. She and the ancestral devil god can be considered enemies. However, what exactly is the life god bestowment technique that you mentioned?" Ji Tianqing said in a calm tone, "This is a mysterious and profound divine art. You won't understand even if I explain more." Luo Li furrowed her brows and glared at him with cold eyes. Ji Tianqing pretended that he did not see it and continued, "Simply speaking, it is a divine art that helps experts gather the power of faith and quickly increase their strength. The ancestral devil god is the ancestor of the demon race, and all of the demon race's citizens worship him devoutly. Hundreds of thousands, or even millions of demon race's power of faith gathered together is immeasurable." Luo Li suddenly understood and nodded. "So that's how it is. I have read about the introduction and description of the power of faith in ancient books. It is said that in the ancient era, the gods of various races would protect their citizens and would often perform miracles to gain the support and worship of their citizens. Over time, the people would imperceptibly gather a strong power of will for the gods. The stronger the power of the gods, the more citizens they would be able to rule and obtain a stronger power of faith from the looks of it. The power of faith is the power of faith?" Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said, "That's right." Luo Li thought for a moment and felt that something was wrong. She sized up Ji Tianqing with a sharp gaze. "Ji Tianqing, even I don't understand these illusory myths and legends. How do you know about these ancient secrets? How do you know them so well?" Luo Li knew that Ji Tianqing was not an ordinary person and must have some extraordinary aspects. She was also very suspicious of Ji Tianqing's identity and wanted to find an opportunity to investigate it. Unfortunately, the person who knew his identity the best was martial god Luo Shui. However, Luo Shui, martial god, didn't reveal a single word about his identity and background. Ji Tianqing glanced at Luo Li and said expressionlessly, "There are so many things in the past and present that are all in books. If you're stupid, you should read more. Don't just ask questions all day." Luo Li was so angry that she gritted her teeth. Her eyebrows twitched, and her pretty face turned pale. If not for Yin Yao's presence, she really wanted to kick him. Her anger towards Ji Tianqing had eased a lot. Now, it had soared to the peak again. "Gee, God, fine. Why would Yao Yao like a jerk like you?" Luo Li was furious and cursed with her eyebrows raised. In her desperation, she forgot to use divine telepathy and cursed directly. Moreover, her emotions were too intense, and her hidden aura also fluctuated. Seeing her reaction, Ji Tianqing immediately cursed inwardly. Sure enough, a few exclamations sounded from the altar beneath the three of them. The chief, priest, elders, and more than 10 Essence Soul Realm experts all sensed the abnormal aura fluctuations. Everyone looked up at the sky and glared at Ji Tianxing and the other two. A strong, murderous aura rushed towards the three of them. Although Ji Tianxing and the other two were still invisible, they had already been exposed. The chief, who was wearing a purple robe and had a head of red hair, waved his scepter and gave the order. Chapter 2020. Following the tribe chief's order, dozens of demon warriors rose into the air. The crowd spread out and charged toward Ji Tianxing and the other two with swords and halberds surrounding the area. At the same time, the tribe's priests and elders joined forces to cast spells, shooting out hundreds of blood rays that scattered around the square. Swoosh! A large formation with a radius of 20 miles was suddenly activated. The surging demonic power formed a huge bloodlight shield that covered the entire square. Ji Tianxing, Luo Li, and the other two were instantly trapped by the bloodlight shield. The sudden upheaval awakened countless people in the square. Although they were still kneeling on the ground, they all looked up at the sky with complicated expressions. Some people did not know what was going on and were confused. Some people heard the words foreign invasion and were filled with anger and murderous intent. In the eyes of the demon people, no matter who it was, disturbing their worship of their ancestor was a great sin worthy of death. Especially the foreign race, who dared to invade the Moonless Tribe's sacred land, was even more heinous. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianxing secretly sighed in his heart. Sigh, this group of demons is going to be in big trouble again. Luo Li is now in a berserk state. I'm afraid the entire tribe will be slaughtered by her. He was not concerned about the life and death of the demons, but he felt that if he continued to bicker with Luo Li, it would definitely cause a bigger commotion. In this way, even if they wanted to keep a low profile, it would be impossible to hide their whereabouts. Just as he was thinking to himself, the dozens of primordial soul realm demon masters had already arrived in front of him. The bloodlight formation that covered the entire square also activated a powerful force, releasing a demonic fog that covered the sky and earth. Ji Tianxing and the other two were hidden in the sky. After being shrouded by the black demonic fog, a faint outline immediately appeared. This was the unique effect of the demonic formation, which was most effective against the foreign race. After all, the foreign race could not devour and absorb demonic aura, so of course, they had nowhere to hide. The dozens of demon masters immediately discovered the position of Ji Tianxing and the other two and roared excitedly, their eyes revealing a bloodthirsty light. Kill! They're there! You three insolent worms, prepare to die. Tear them into pieces and blast them into pieces. How dare you intrude into our Moonless Tribe? You're courting death. Roars of rage and battle cries reverberated in the air above the square. More than 40 demon masters waved their swords, spears, and halberds, releasing a magical brilliance that covered the sky and earth. Ji Tianxing and the other two. The three of them naturally would not sit and wait and immediately launch a counterattack. Luo Li took the lead and charged toward the demon masters with a murderous aura. Since her whereabouts had already been exposed, she might as well reveal her true form. Like an icy blue flame, she started a massacre in the sky. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. She waved her palms, her slender fingers flicking repeatedly, shooting out thousands of ice-blue, sharp blades, enveloping the demon experts. Those Essence Soul Realm fiends were as weak as paper in her hands. None of them could withstand a single strike from her. Even if it was just a ray of sword chi or a ray of ice and fire, it was enough to kill those demon masters. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao did not rest either. They took out the Burial of Heaven and the Water Reversal Divine Sword and slashed out dazzling giant swords, fighting with the demon warriors. Boom, boom, boom. The two sides fought fiercely. All kinds of colorful magical brilliance collided fiercely in the sky, causing deafening loud noises. However, there was a great disparity in strength between the two sides. In just a few breaths, more than 40 demon masters were killed by Ji Tianxing and the other two. Many pieces of corpses and purple and black demon blood fell on the square like a torrential rain. Countless people cried out in alarm, revealing fear and worry in their eyes. However, more people were not afraid. Instead, they were even more indignant. They did not run away in a panic. They still knelt on the square, maintaining a posture of worship. In the hearts of the demon people, their own safety was far less important than worshiping their ancestors. They saw that Ji Tianxing, Yun Yao, and Luo Li were actually so powerful. The chief, the priest, and the elder looked at each other with a solemn expression. The three of them no longer hesitated. They held their weapons and magic treasures and rushed into the sky without care for their own safety, killing Ji Tianxing and the other two. The remaining 50 or so essence soul experts also hurriedly followed and attacked Ji Tianxing and the others. Everyone fought in the sky above the square. The battle was very tragic. There were demon masters controlling the formation, releasing powerful pressure and all kinds of attacks, constantly attacking Ji Tianxing, Luo Li, and the other two. There were also some demon masters who saw that the situation was not good. They took the time to send out messages, asking for help from the nearby tribes and higher-level cities. But no matter what, the Moonless tribe could not resist the massacre of Ji Tianxing and the other two. As the battle progressed, one demon master after another was blasted into pieces, sprinkling a rain of blood all over the sky. After a short period of 20 breaths, more than 50 demon warriors also died in battle. The tribal chief, priest, and elder were also injured. Only then did they realize that the strength of Ji Tianxing and the other two was beyond their expectations. Ji Tianxing and Luo Li's strength had both reached the martial sage realm. They were not opponents that they could fight against. If they continued to fight, everyone would be killed. Therefore, the tribal chief, priest, and elder secretly communicated and quickly made up their minds. The tribal chief waved his scepter and shouted with grief and indignation, "People of the Moonless tribe, the lowly humans have invaded and killed our people. They even tried to destroy the altar of our ancestors. Our tribe has encountered such a disaster. None of us can sit still and wait for death. It's time to show the iron blood and pride of our tribe. For the dignity of our tribe, for the glory of our ancestors, we will fight to the death." The tribal chief's hair was disheveled and his body was covered in blood. He looked very miserable. The tens of thousands of demon people were already filled with grief and indignation. They could not hold back their anger and killing intent. Hearing the tribal chief's call, everyone stood up and took out their swords and weapons. They charged toward Ji Tianxing and the other two without any regard for their own safety. The tens of thousands of people in the square attacked them without any regard for their own safety. The overwhelming brilliance of spells instantly covered the sky and flooded the entire square. As the saying went, many ants could bite an elephant to death. No matter how strong Ji Tianxing and the other two were, it would be difficult for them to escape in a short time. The three of them could only be cautious and defend with all their might. They used all kinds of secret techniques to kill the demon people. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao had already experienced such a big battle. They had even fought with a 1,000,000-strong demon army. Luo Li was born noble and had always been active in the Luo Shui god kingdom. When had she ever seen such a scene? She was shocked and angry. She fought with all her might and did not leave any leeway. In a short period of time, she had killed thousands of demon people. She was really covered in blood, like a goddess of death. Chapter 2021. Although Luo Li had a high status and was the most trusted female official of the Luo Shui martial god, she held the power of life and death. Moreover, she was also a martial saint and could destroy mountains and rivers with a flick of her finger. However, she had always been pampered and rarely went into battle to kill the enemy. Today, she was besieged by tens of thousands of demons and had to fight a bloody battle. This was the first time she had experienced such a thing. Her emotions were very complicated. She was shocked, angry, and somewhat excited. In short, her emotions were a little out of control. She was not as calm as before. The crazy killing, the flying corpses and blood, and the ferocious and fanatical expressions of the demons deeply stimulated her. The more she killed, the more excited she became. She actually forgot about Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao, and also forgot her original intention of entering the North Underworld Mountain. There was only one thought left in her mind. That was to kill all the demons in front of her and eliminate all evil. Today, every time she killed a demon, the Luoshui Divine Kingdom would have one less enemy in the future. Yin Yao was also fighting a bloody battle. She was besieged by hundreds of demons and could not escape in a short time. Even the glazed fire dragon and the black dragon joined the battle. They spat out overwhelming dragon breaths, waved their huge dragon claws, and wantonly slaughtered those crazy demons, destroying the square and the altar. The aftermath of the battle quickly destroyed the defensive array of the square and affected the entire tribe. One after another, houses and palaces turned into ruins and dust in the destructive shockwaves. The disaster of the Moonless tribe had really arrived. However, the fanatical demon race commoners continued to send themselves to their deaths, as if they didn't know what fatigue was and didn't know what fear was. The people and fanatical believers of the ancestor demon god would bite off a piece of the enemy's flesh even if they were smashed to pieces. Unfortunately, the difference in strength between the two sides was too great. Even if there were as many as 100,000 demons, they could not hurt Luo Li and Yun Yao. Even if the 100,000 demons were like ants, Luo Li, Yin Yao, and the two dragons were elephants made of steel. Originally, Ji Tianxing was also on a killing spree. He held the sword of burial of heaven in his hand and waved out sword lights that covered the sky as if he had entered an uninhabited land. In a short period of time, he killed thousands of demons. No one was a match for him at all. However, he had been secretly paying attention to the movements of the tribe chief, priest, and elder. He knew very well that those three people were the strongest in the tribe. As long as those three powerhouses were killed, the Moonless tribe would be doomed. However, he did not expect that the demons, who had always been brave and fearless of death, would actually run away. It seems like these three fellows are different from the ordinary demons. Ji Tianxing sneered and immediately turned into a stream of light, passing through the numerous obstacles and encirclement, leaving the square. He's SSSSS. After chasing them for 500 kilometers, he finally caught up to the chief and the elders on top of a mountain range. Gods is demon. Es demon, God his of the god of hell, god of God, and his of God his of course. Ji Tianxing's figure flashed, and he teleported 10 miles away, blocking in front of the chief and the elder. He stood proudly in the sky. His left hand formed a sword seal, and his right hand held the sword of burial of heaven. He stared coldly at the tribal chief and elder. As the chief and elders of the tribe, they actually fled in the face of battle and let the 100,000 tribesmen die just to escape for their own lives. You two are so cunning and despicable. You're really giving the demon race face. Ji Tianxing's sarcasm made the chieftain and the elders feel so ashamed that they were unable to show their faces. Their eyes and expressions were all evasive. However, the elder quickly put away his shame and stared coldly at Ji Tianxing. He shouted angrily, "Human brat, you have no right to laugh at us. We are neither weaklings who are stubborn and pedantic, nor are we fanatical and brainless believers. Why should we make unnecessary sacrifices?" As an expert and a leader, he naturally had to assess the situation and know when to advance or retreat. If he really didn't care about his own life, who would have been able to survive until now? Even you can't do that. Although the elder's words were a truth that everyone in the martial arts world understood. But coming from the mouth of a demon expert, Ji Tianxing still had a whole new level of respect for him. I really didn't expect that the demon race is gradually changing their views. A tribal elder can also say such words. Looks like the demon race is becoming more and more cunning and treacherous. The chief glared at him and said expressionlessly, "Knowing that the enemy is too strong but still going to die, this is not loyalty and bravery, but stupidity. Those old, weak, women, and children are all devout believers of the ancestor. Even if I send them to die, they will die a worthy death with no regrets. However, I can't die on the spot. I have to live on and avenge my dead people. Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and said coldly, "Although the idea is good, it can only be an extravagant hope. You have no chance." The chief was not afraid at all. He grinned coldly and said, "Is that so? Brat, you're too arrogant." Ji Tianxing looked askance at him and said with murderous intent, "Arrogant, is it? Ha! All of the demon race people will die today, without a doubt. And the two of you will also be buried here. In less than an hour, the entire tribe will be reduced to ashes. The two of you can say your last words." As his voice sounded, an invisible, majestic, domineering aura spread out in the sky. The chief of the tribe was also intimidated, but he did not back down. He sneered and said, "I admit that your strength is very strong, and we are not your match. However, it's not that easy for you to kill us. Taking 10,000 steps back, even if you kill us, the high priest has already left the Moonless tribe and went to Black Sun City to report the news. Brat, you and those two women will have to bear the anger and revenge of my clan. What awaits you will definitely be the outcome of being smashed to pieces and the extremely cruel torture of the divine soul." After saying that, the chief and elders took out their weapons and magic treasures, casting spells to attack Ji Tianxing from both sides. Triple God Slaying Blade. Bloodlight illuminates the firmament. The elder held a pair of strange-looking sharp blades in his hands, stabbing out 9 black and red blade lights, attacking Ji Tianxing with all his strength. Before the blade lights arrived, waves of bone-chilling wind attacked, shaking Ji Tianxing's divine soul as if to freeze his divine soul. The chief of the tribe waved his blood-colored scepter, releasing a bloodlight that covered the sky and earth, turning into a few terrifying hurricanes, sweeping towards Ji Tianxing. The power of each bloody hurricane was enough to crush mountains, rivers, and earth, and grind everything into dust. Once Ji Tianxing was swallowed by the bloody hurricane, he would have to pay a heavy price to escape. However, just as the chief and elders joined forces to attack, he also mercilessly counterattacked. Heavenly Dragon Palm, heaven-breaking sword. He roared with murderous intent, raising his left palm and striking out 2,000 feet long golden divine dragons, blasting towards the triple God Slaying Blade and the Moonless Elder. Chapter 2022. Bang, bang, bang. A series of muffled sounds exploded in the sky, shaking the heavens. The triple God-slaying blade was defeated by the 2 heavenly dragons on the spot. It exploded into pieces and scattered in the sky. The power of the 2 heavenly dragons did not decrease and hit the elder hard. The elder was covered in blood and flew back in a sorry state. At the same time, the bloody hurricane released by the tribal chief was also shattered by the giant sword. He was hit by the giant sword before he could dodge. Boom! Following a muffled explosion, his tall and sturdy body was cut in half on the spot. Dark purple demon blood, mixed with colorful internal organs, sprayed out immediately. The tribal chief did not expect that he would be defeated by Ji Tianxing in one move, and his body would be destroyed. The body of a demon powerhouse had always been abnormally strong, enough to look down on the world. However, in front of Ji Tianxing, the tribal chief was like a piece of paper. However, his will was very tenacious, and he refused to give up. The 2 halves of the body emitted a blood-red light and flew together, trying to piece back together to form a complete body. However, how could Ji Tianxing let him do as he wished? Piercing sword. The heaven's Burier sword thrust forward, emitting a dazzling cold light that flashed in the night sky. In the next moment, the cold light pierced through the tribal chief's head and exploded in his head. Boom! With a muffled explosion, a blazing white mushroom cloud bloomed, illuminating the night sky for hundreds of miles. This time, not only was the tribal chief's body blown into powder, even his soul could not escape in time and was instantly killed by the sword light. The tribal chief of the Moonless tribe was killed by Ji Tianxing in 2 moves just like that. The elder, who was not far away, witnessed this scene with his own eyes. He was shocked and terrified. He was about to use his unique skill to attack Ji Tianxing and save the tribal chief at the same time. Seeing that the tribal chief was killed in an instant, he could not help but be stunned. After coming back to his senses, he turned around and fled without hesitation. He fled to the north without a care for anything else. Ji Tianxing turned into a stream of light and chased after him, using his divine sense to lock onto the elder's divine soul aura. The elder saw that he was relentless in his pursuit and looked like he wouldn't give up until he was dead. He was shocked and angry. In a moment of desperation, the elder exerted all his strength to use the teleportation secret technique and traveled 20 miles in an instant. Ji Tianxing followed closely behind and teleported 20 miles, catching up with him immediately. 7-star sword. With a wave of the burial of heaven's sword, 49 giant swords of golden light instantly engulfed the elder's figure. Pung pung pung. The elder, who had nowhere to hide, was immediately struck by the sword light that filled the sky and was blasted into pieces. After his physical body was destroyed, his divine soul was also severely injured. He fled to the north in a panic. However, Ji Tianxing caught up with him and waved his palm to release a dazzling 5-colored thunderbolt. Following a few thunderous booms, the elder's divine soul was destroyed on the spot by the thunderbolts and vanished into thin air. After the 5-colored thunderbolts dissipated, the night sky gradually regained its calm. Ji Tianxing stood in the night sky and frowned as he looked to the north. He secretly released his divine sense and began to investigate and search. Although he had successfully intercepted the fleeing chief and elder and killed them with thunderous means, he was not happy. However, he wasn't happy at all. His heart was filled with worry. After all, the priest of the Moonless tribe had disappeared. From the chief's tone, the priest had long fled the Moonless tribe and was rushing to Black Sun City. In the demon territory, the most sacred and dignified place was, of course, the Sacred Mountain. The ancestor demon god and the 4 demon saints were all gathered there. That was the leader of North Underworld Mountain. Below the Sacred Mountain, there were more than 20 cities, all of which had demon monarch powerhouses and millions of demons gathered there. Below the cities were the various demon tribes. The Moonless tribe was not far from Black Sun City and was also under the jurisdiction of Black Sun City. Before entering North Underworld Mountain, Ji Tianxing had studied the map of North Underworld Mountain. The first target they were searching for was the Black Sun Abyss. In recent years, there had been many anomalies there, and there might be divine pearls hidden there. Unfortunately, the Black Sun Abyss was north of Black Sun City, about 10,000 miles away. Once the priest escaped to Black Sun City and reported, Black Sun City would definitely send a large number of experts and powerhouses to madly search for and kill Ji Tianxing and the other 2. Ji Tianxing was not afraid of being surrounded by the demons, but in that case, he would no longer be able to hide his whereabouts. After 100 breaths, he used his divine sense to search 1,000 miles, but did not find any trace or aura of the priest. He had reason to believe that the priest had long fled far away. Most likely, after escaping the Moonless tribe, the priest had used some kind of secret technique or magic treasure. After all, when he caught up with the chief and elder, the priest was already gone. Sigh. Ji Tianxing sighed helplessly and turned to fly back to the Moonless tribe. After a while, he returned to the Moonless tribe. Overlooking the valley from the night sky, he saw the entire tribe. At this time, the Moonless tribe had long become a sea of fire and ruins, completely destroyed. The destructive dragon breath burned the valley into scorched earth, and the surrounding mountains also melted into magma, continuously flowing into the valley. The aftermath of the great battle destroyed all the houses and buildings into dregs and powder. 90% of the 100,000 demon civilians were also massacred. The ground was littered with broken bones, dark purple bloodstains, and broken pieces of weapons. The tens of thousands of surviving demon civilians were completely scared out of their wits. No matter how devout their faith was or how crazy their fighting spirit was, it all disappeared at this time. In front of the hellish scene and massacre, nothing was important except for survival. The tens of thousands of demon civilians collapsed, roaring and screaming in fear and despair, desperately fleeing in all directions. However, Luo Li, Yun Yao, and the two divine dragons each guarded a direction, surrounding the entire valley. The demons who fled in all directions could not escape alive. After a quarter of an hour, the battle finally ended. All the demons had been killed. The world quieted down, leaving only the sound of rolling magma and the rising flames. Ji Tianxing returned to the top of the ruins, and Luo Li, Yun Yao, and the two divine dragons all surrounded him. Yun Yao looked at him with concern and asked, "Tianxing, have you dealt with the three guys who escaped?" Although Luo Li did not speak, she also looked at him with a serious gaze. Ji Tianxing shook his head and said with a serious expression, "I only caught up with the chief and the elders and killed them. However, the priest is nowhere to be seen." According to the chief, the priest fled to Black Sun City in the north to inform them. Yun Yao suddenly frowned, showing a touch of worry. "This is bad. That tribe's priest is a tribulation stage powerhouse. He can definitely escape to Black Sun City. Our whereabouts will be exposed, and we will soon be hunted down by a large number of demon powerhouses." Chapter 2023. Luo Li's words silenced Ji, Tianxing, and Yun Yao. Black Sun City was near the Black Sun Abyss, but they had to go there to search for the God Orb. Everyone knew that. Their whereabouts had definitely been exposed this time. With the demon race's style, they would never let them go. They would chase them to the end and never give up. The atmosphere was a little dull and a little awkward. The three of them were silent. After a long time, Ji Tianxing said, "We can't stay here for long. We should go." Then, he rode the black dragon and flew north. Yun Yao saw Luo Li's strange expression and seemed to blame herself, so she comforted her. "Luo Li, don't think too much. We won't blame you. Before we came to the North Underworld Mountain, we had already considered this problem and made preparations." Luo Li nodded slightly and said with a solemn expression, "It's useless to say anything now. Yao Yao, you don't have to comfort me. I know what to do. This happened because of me, so I will take responsibility. No matter what dangers we encounter in the future, I will try to resolve them. I will follow the Divine Master's orders to help you search for the God Orb and protect you to leave the North Underworld Mountain safely." Then, she stopped talking and rode the glass fire dragon to the north. 40,000 miles away from the Moonless tribe, there was a grayish-brown wasteland. The flat and vast wasteland was thousands of miles wide, and the ground was covered with gravel and weeds. It was covered by black clouds and thick fog all year round. The light was dim and filled with the cold aura of death. Even the ferocious demon beasts didn't dare to approach this area, let alone enter the wasteland. In the depths of the wasteland, there was an ancient city that covered an area of 100 miles. The ancient city made of black stone was circular, like a black sun buckled on the wasteland. The city walls were 30 meters high, made of huge black stone, and inlaid with large iron chains that were as thick as the mouth of a bowl, tightly connected. Inside the city were rows upon rows of houses, like fortresses, like inverted black bowls. The architectural style of the ancient city retained the most ancient characteristics of the demon race, mysterious and gloomy. The devils walking on the streets were all dressed in loose black robes. Their bodies were filled with black qi, as if they were ghosts walking in the dark night. This was despite the fact that there were nearly 1 million demons living in the city. However, there were very few people walking in the streets and alleys. The entire ancient city was not bustling with activity. It was exceptionally quiet and strange. At this moment, it was late at night. A dark red blood moon hung diagonally in the night sky, obscured by dark clouds and thick fog, appearing and disappearing from time to time. In the depths of the ancient city, in the most solemn palace, in the spacious meeting hall, the gems on the wall shone with a dark red light. Sitting on the throne at the head of the table was a white-haired, middle-aged man in a purple robe. This person's skin was dark purple, his eyes were scarlet red like flames, and his facial features were sharp as if they were carved by a blade. His entire body emitted dense killing intent and domineering aura. He was the city lord of Black Sun City, Shueyu. At the same time, he was one of the 36 demon monarchs of the demon race, ranked 9th Demon Monarch Blood Ghost. Demon Monarch Blood Ghost had ruled Black Sun City for hundreds of years. He controlled a city, over 50 tribes, and nearly 10 million demons. He was one of the top nobles of the demon race, and had the qualifications to meet the 4 demon saints. On the left side of the meeting hall sat a purple-robed elder of the demon race. This person's face was old, and his body was somewhat stooped. He held a 5-foot-long ghost head staff in his hand. Under the disheveled white hair was a face that was as withered as an old tree. He looked like he had 1 foot in the grave and was getting old. However, his eyes were as sharp as a hawk's, and occasionally flashed with a malicious light that made people shudder. From this, it could be seen that this purple-robed elder was not an ordinary person. Even Demon Monarch Blood Ghost maintained a respectful attitude towards him, not daring to slight him. This purple-robed elder was also one of the 36 demon monarchs, ranked 4th, Demon Monarch Ghost Shadow. In the hall paved with black stone, a gray-robed elder stood respectfully. This person's appearance was somewhat wretched. His gray robe was stained with blood, and his white hair was disheveled. Even so, he still held a Demon Dao Codex and a snake-headed walking stick in his hand. If Ji Tianqing was here, he would definitely recognize this person as the priest of the Moonless tribe. The priest lowered his head and bowed to Demon Monarch Blood Ghost. He said in a respectful tone, "This subordinate is the high priest of the Moonless tribe. Greetings to the honorable city lord." Demon Monarch Blood Ghost raised his eyebrows and looked at him. He asked in a low voice, "Priest Moonless, you came here injured in the middle of the night, saying that you have an urgent military report. What the hell happened? Did the Moonless tribe encounter some difficulties?" Priest Moonless shook his head, his face filled with grief and indignation. He said in an indignant tone, "City Lord, what our tribe encountered is not a difficulty, but a disaster." Demon Monarch Blood Ghost was startled and frowned. Even Demon Monarch Ghost Shadow, who was sitting on the left, narrowed his eyes and looked at Priest Moonless with a sharp gaze. An invisible pressure enveloped Priest Moonless. He was in awe and hurriedly explained, reporting to City Lord, "This is what happened. Today, our tribe was holding a sacrificial ceremony, and hundreds of thousands of people were praying under the altar. Who knew that a strong human enemy would suddenly invade, break into the altar, and blaspheme the glory of our ancestors?" Priest Moonless explained everything that had happened in detail. Of course, he also cleverly explained that he, the chief, and the elders had run away at the last minute. He was not afraid of death, nor was he running away at the last minute. He shouldered a heavy responsibility and came to Black Sun City to report. After hearing the story, Demon Monarch Blood Ghost's face darkened. His brows furrowed and his eyes flashed with killing intent. "Priest Moonless, are you sure those 3 invaders were humans? A young man and 2 young women? They really massacred the Moonless tribe?" Priest Moonless hurriedly nodded and said in an indignant tone, "Yes, this subordinate saw it clearly. Those 3 were very strong, and they had 2 divine dragons with them. When this subordinate left the tribe, tens of thousands of people had been killed by them. By now, the entire tribe has probably been destroyed, and all the people have been massacred. Those 3 human bastards did not even spare the old, weak, women, and children of our tribe. They are simply heartless and cruel to the extreme." Ghost Blood Demon Monarch clenched his fists so tightly that creaking sounds could be heard. His killing intent grew even thicker. "Priest Moonless, do you still remember what those 3 people looked like?" "Of course I do." Priest Moonless was already prepared. He hurriedly waved his hand, and a white light floated in the air. The white light formed a light screen, and several images appeared on it. They were the portraits of Ji Tianqing, Yun Yao, Luo Li, and the 2 divine dragons. The images were very clear and very lifelike. Demon Monarch Blood Ghost looked over and fixed his gaze on Ji Tianxing's portrait, and his eyes widened. Chapter 2024. Ghost Shadow Devil Monarch and Elder Moonless were stunned by Devil Monarch Blood's words. Both of them frowned as they stared at Ji Tianxing's portrait. Elder Moonless subconsciously asked, "City Lord, could it be that you've seen this demon before?" Devil King Blood did not answer. Instead, he stared at Ji Tianxing's portrait and asked Ghost Shadow Demon King, "Ghost Shadow, do you recognize him?" Ghost Shadow Demon King was also suspicious. He was not sure at first, but after being reminded, he said in a cold voice, "Old Nine, you mean? He is Ji Tianxing?" Devil King Blood nodded slightly and said in a low voice, "That's right. He is the #1 enemy of my tribe, the human genius that our ancestor has requested to kill many times, Ji Tianxing. In these few years, I have seen this person's portrait many times, and I have a deep impression of him. Although this monarch has never seen him before, this monarch definitely won't be mistaken about his portrait." After saying that, a light flashed in his palm, and a scroll appeared. He shook his hand, and the scroll opened, revealing a portrait. The person in the portrait was a white-robed, black-haired youth. It was Ji Tianxing without a doubt. Ghost Shadow Demon King and Elder Moonless looked at the scroll in Devil King Blood's hand, and then looked at Ji Tianxing's portrait on the screen. They no longer had any doubts. It really is him. Elder Moonless was emotional. He said with grief and indignation, "No wonder this person is so strong, and his methods are so cruel. Master Castellan, please avenge our Moonless tribe." Devil King Blood glanced at him and said expressionlessly, "Ji Tianxing is the #1 enemy of my tribe. Our ancestor has ordered him to be killed. Even if he did not beg, I would not have let him go." Elder Moonless was relieved. He thanked Devil King Blood gratefully and said no more. The ghostly shadow demon monarch frowned and pondered for a moment. With a serious expression, he said, "Ji Tianxing dared to intrude into our territory and even massacred the Moonless tribe. We must cut him into pieces to vent our anger. However, Old Nine, you should have heard that Ancestor Shui Pao once went to the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains to kill Ji Tianxing. The old ancestor returned in defeat, his physical body destroyed, leaving only his divine soul to recuperate in the sacred mountain." Demon Lord Blood Demon Lord nodded slightly and said in a low voice, "How could I not know? Not only Patriarch Shui Pao, but the newly promoted demon Saint Shura was also killed by Ji Tianxing not long ago. Fortunately, Lord Azura had mastered a secret technique. After his body was destroyed, he could still use the heavenly demon Jade Seed technique to be reborn. 2 great devil saints have fallen in the hands of Ji Tianxing. This shows how strong and powerful he is." "That's right." Ghostly Shadow Demon Monarch nodded and said in a serious tone, "Even if you and I want to kill the enemy, we don't have the corresponding strength. We can't be reckless." Devil Monarch Blood's lips curled into a cold smile as he said in a playful tone, "With our strength, we naturally can't kill Ji Tianxing, nor can we obtain such a huge contribution. However, we only need to report the news and track Ji Tianxing's location. Naturally, there will be stronger great devil saints who will take his lowly life." Ghostly Shadow Demon Monarch raised his eyebrows and immediately understood what he meant. He nodded with a cold smile on his face. In the wee hours of the morning, the night was not over, but the light was about to come. The sky was still covered with gray clouds, and the cold wind was howling. Ji Tianxing, Yun Yao, and Luo Li were riding 2 divine dragons and flying in the sky. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, the 3 of them avoided Black Sun City. At this time, the 3 of them had arrived near the Black Sun Abyss. 100 miles in front of them was a huge pitch-black abyss. It was a ravine that ran from west to east, thousands of miles long and 200 miles wide. The ravine was bottomless, and it was shrouded in demonic fog all year round, making it impossible to see the situation inside. Looking down from the sky, this huge ravine looked like a terrifying sword mark left behind by God who had slashed the mountains and rivers. It also looked like a huge crack that had split the earth. The two divine dragons sped up and flew toward the black sun abyss. Luoli stood on the dragon's back and spoke to Ji Tianxing and Yunyao via divine sense. The black sun abyss is right in front of us. Over the past few years, there have been many heavenly anomalies here. The demon race experts were also alarmed and searched many times, but they didn't find any clues. However, in the abyss, they found a large number of powerful demonic beasts, as well as some ancient ruins and remnant souls. According to my guess, the abyss may have been the cave abode of a demon race expert thousands of years ago. Due to some reason, the cave abode collapsed, causing the earth to collapse, and this abyss appeared. The ancient ruins and powerful demonic aura attracted hundreds of demonic beasts and caused many anomalies. However, in recent years, the demon race experts have frequently explored this place and searched it countless times. No one can be sure if the divine orb is hidden here, so don't get your hopes up. Ji Tianxing nodded and said calmly, "Even if there's only a sliver of hope, we won't give up. How can we know if it's real without trying?" Luoli nodded slightly and said, "Our whereabouts have been exposed, and we are in a very dangerous situation. We must move quickly. The sooner we finish exploring the Black Sun Abyss, the sooner we leave this place." Soon, the two divine dragons entered the abyss shrouded in black fog. The vast abyss was completely filled with black fog and demonic aura. There was almost no light, and they couldn't see the surroundings. Everyone used their consciousness to cover hundreds of miles and carefully searched. The walls on both sides of the cliff were so steep that they were almost straight. Not a single blade of grass grew on the cold gray walls, but many black mushrooms and moss grew on them. To the demon race, these things were excellent tonics and medicinal ingredients. To other races, they were evil and poisonous. The three of them were ambushed before they reached the bottom of the abyss. Suddenly, a few pairs of giant scarlet eyes appeared in the surrounding black fog, emitting a bloodthirsty light. Roar! Caw! Several low, vigorous, and ear-piercing beast roars quickly approached from all directions. In the next moment, four gigantic demonic beasts with violent auras rushed out of the black fog. The one in the east was a blood-winged demonic leopard that was more than 300 meters long. It was blood-red in color and had two pairs of wide blood wings. The one in the west was a black crow that was more than 300 meters wide. It had 3 heads and was surrounded by evil demonic aura. The demonic beasts that rushed out from the south and north were a 5-color python that was more than 300 meters long and a demonic wolf that was as large as a mountain. The python had 2 heads that spat out a 5-colored poisonous fog. The demonic wolf's 4 hooves burned with ice blue soul fire, and its entire body emitted an extremely cold aura. Its ice blue eyes had double pupils. These bloodthirsty demonic beasts weren't like the experts of the demon race who could speak a few simple words. Chapter 2025. Ji Tianxing and the other two had long expected the appearance of the 4 demonic beasts. They even knew that there were far more demonic beasts in the Black Sun Abyss. It was because of this that this place became a forbidden area. Martial artists below the Tribulation Transcendence realm did not dare to enter, or they would die. After all, the demonic beasts that could occupy this place were all at the Tribulation Transcendence realm. The 4 demonic beasts before them were no exception. The weakest was at the 2nd tier of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. The strongest, the blood-winged demonic leopard, was at the 4th tier of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. Ji Tianxing and the other 2 demonic beasts launched a counterattack without hesitation. Both sides were determined to kill each other. They used powerful secret techniques and fought in the abyss until the sky darkened and the earth darkened, splashing brilliance everywhere. The colorful radiance of dermic powers clashed fiercely, bursting out wave after wave of shock waves that rippled outwards. Loud rumbling sounds reverberated in the abyss. The earth was shaking, and the steep rock walls on both sides of the abyss were also cracked, and countless pieces of rubble collapsed. This battle lasted for only 20 breaths of time before it quickly ended. There was no doubt about the fate of the 4 demonic beasts. They were blasted into smithereens. Even their souls were devoured by the sword of burial of heaven. To the 4 demonic beasts, this was a tragedy and disaster. To the many demonic beasts in the Black Sun Abyss, this was a sign of impending danger. But to Ji Tianxing and the other 2, this was just a small interlude, not worth mentioning. The 3 rode the demonic beasts and continued flying downwards. Not long after, the 3 landed at the bottom of the abyss. The bottom of the abyss was 200 miles below the ground. The ground was made of hard black rock, full of ravines and cracks. However, the bottom of the abyss was filled with water, at least 100 feet deep. The black water was as still as death, without any ripples. It covered many cracks, boulders, and broken walls. Ji Tianxing and the other 2 explored from west to east, releasing their divine senses into the water to investigate the situation underground. Within 15 minutes, the 3 found many traces. There were many corpses of demonic beasts, as well as tattered dermic treasures and weapon fragments. There were also many broken walls submerged in the black water. It was obvious that the situation was as Luo Li had guessed. There used to be grand palaces and buildings here. They were most likely the cave abodes of demon race experts. Unfortunately, no matter how grand the palaces were, they were all in ruins, submerged in the long river of history. History. Only a few wide and thick dilapidated walls were left, still telling the story of the past glory. The 3 had they searched 100 miles away when they encountered trouble. It was still an attack of magical beasts, but there were as many as 9 of them. The 9 demonic beasts of heaven were overlords of tribulation, transcendence, transcendence. They were where the demonic beasts, demonic transcendence, were they transcendence. The demonic beasts. Beast, demonic transcendence, transcending transcendence be. Soon, another earth-shattering battle began in the abyss. Hundreds of ferocious demonic beasts besieged Ji Tianxing's group and the 2 divine dragons, unleashing devastating attacks. The 3 of them also fought back with all their might, using powerful secret techniques to quickly slaughter those demonic beasts. Both sides fought fiercely. Rumbling sounds could be heard, and terrifying shock waves could be heard. At the bottom of the abyss, deep pits and cracks were blasted open one after another. The rock walls on both sides of the abyss were also shattered. Countless rocks collapsed and smashed into the black water at the bottom of the abyss. The earth was trembling violently, shocking the area within 1,000 miles. The dazzling radiance of the spell penetrated the darkness of the abyss and was reflected in the night sky like a colorful rainbow. This battle lasted for a quarter of an hour, and 200 miles of the abyss was completely destroyed. Hundreds of demonic beasts suffered heavy casualties. More than 90 of them were killed, and only a few demonic beasts managed to escape. Ji Tianxing and the other 2 did not chase after them to avoid wasting time. Anyway, after this battle, the magical beasts in the abyss were scared out of their wits. The strongest tribulation transcendence demonic beasts were basically all killed, and the remaining small fries were not a threat. In the next hour, no more demonic beasts attacked them. They all hid far away. In this hour, the 3 of them searched hundreds of miles. They found many broken artifacts and weapon fragments, ancient demonic inscriptions, and palace ruins. But these things were not what they were looking for. There was still no clue about the divine pearl they desperately wanted. The 3 of them were unwilling to give up and continued to search in the abyss. After a full 8 hours, the 3 of them reached the eastern end of the abyss. Everyone's eyes were filled with disappointment. Luo Li was still unwilling. She turned to Yin Yao and asked, "Yao Yao, you still can't sense the divine pearl's aura?" Yin Yao shook her head and said calmly, "No, maybe the divine pearl isn't here at all." Ji Tianxing believed in her judgment and comforted her. "Yao Yao, don't worry. We weren't sure where the divine pearl was hidden in the first place. We came to the Black Sun Abyss with the mentality of trying our luck. If it's not here, We can just find another place." Before he could finish, the abyss above his head suddenly lit up with a dazzling bloody light. Swoosh! That dark red blood light poured down from the top of the abyss like a flood. In the blink of an eye, the bloodlight formed a huge barrier that covered a radius of 200 miles. A violent and fierce aura, as heavy as a mountain, was released from the bloodlight barrier, fiercely suppressing Ji, Tianxing, and the other two. The three of them immediately changed their expressions, a cold light surging in their eyes. "Damn it, the demons found us and have already chased us here." Ji Tianxing frowned, his eyes flashing with a cold light. Luo Li also frowned, a murderous intent flashing in her clear eyes. "No matter, since they came to die, I'll make sure they don't return." With that, the three of them rode the two divine dragons and flew above the abyss. Swoosh, swoosh. 10 breaths later, the three of them flew out of the Black Sun abyss and arrived above it. It was already afternoon. The golden setting sun shone through the clouds in the sky, sprinkling golden halos. On the cliffs on both sides of the Black Sun abyss, hundreds of demon experts stood in the surrounding sky. There were more than 400 of them, all of them at the essence spirit realm, the elites of the demon race. They were working together to cast a spell to increase the power of the bloodlight array that covered a radius of 200 miles. In the sky not far from Ji Tianxing and the other two stood a dozen demon generals, all of them Tribulation Transcendence realm experts. Their leader was dressed in a purple robe with a head full of white hair. His facial features were as sharp as a knife, and he exuded a dignified aura. Standing beside him was a wizened old man in a purple robe, leaning on a ghost head staff.